the Brock Lesnar Alistair Overeem fight, because I mean, come on, that's like the example of two of the biggest, most gigantic, muscular guys to ever fight on a truly high level.
Like the epitome of a drug match. Yeah.
Yes, but by the same token, Ian, follow me here. This is going to sound crazy, but like there is still such a difference, even with massive amounts of PEDs involved in genetically blessed people.
What's up, and welcome to the Iron Road. I am Ian, along with Eric, the demented, deranged, diabolical, depraved dad of two. At the start of each episode, I do feel it's necessary to check in on Eric's mental state, just to kind of a little litmus test of what I'm in for today. But Eric, how are you, buddy? What's happening in your life?
Well, you know the answer to that question.
Yeah,
we
I
were just
know.
having a personal conversation before.
Yeah, you don't have to share that. I'm just
I'll share a little bit of it
messing
because I think it's important. I think, I'll just say someone very close to me got into a really, really bad car accident. They fell asleep behind the wheel, and if you saw this debris passing by on the road, or someone sent you a picture, you'd be like, all right, when's the funeral? Like, it's that bad, and everybody involved in the accident was totally okay. I guess, on one hand, I'm not saying this because I want the audience's sympathy or something. I'm saying this because, as I was discussing with Ian, we've all had friends and relatives, and if you haven't had it yet, you will at some point, who get really sick, perhaps they develop drug addictions, things that kind of force you to accept that they may no longer be around. And when you have people like that in your life, you make peace with it, whether it's a sick grandparent or something. And then you have situations like this where you're having a seemingly normal day. Perhaps it was a really good day. And then, in my case, someone shows up at your house at 3 o'clock in the morning telling you that this person is in the hospital. And on the way to the hospital, you're going through every possible permutation, every possible outcome.
Scenario.
Is this person missing their legs? Are they paralyzed? Are they in a coma? Like, what's going on here? And thankfully, everything was okay. All we did was lose a car. And like, that's really nothing in the grand scheme of things. And so,
Yes.
First thing I'll tell people, sounds ridiculous, but you're never too macho to go home early. You're never too macho to stay somewhere if you're tired. Thankfully, there was no alcohol involved in this. This person was just working really hard and stayed up too late and fell asleep behind the wheel. But, you're never too macho to take care of yourself. And you got to be careful, man. You just never know when your number is going to get called. And it's a situation where, we're dads, we're happily married. I hope you guys are too. Never stop telling people that you love them and care about them, because you never know. You know what I mean? So
yeah,
I went from being very upset about this, and I still am, to extremely grateful that everything is okay. When I was 16, I had a couple friends from my town that were about 3 years older than me. They would have been, I want to say, freshmen in college when I was a junior in, maybe they were sophomores in college when I was a junior in high school. It's just towards the end of my junior year. And these guys drove home drunk, smashed their car into a pole. Two of them were dead. One of them survived, and it was devastating. And so, like, I've always been very sensitive to things like this. I've never driven drunk. I've always been before I started driving, this happened. You know what I mean? So, like, I've seen this. When you're into powerlifting and stuff, you tend to be around pretty extreme dudes. And so you're around guys that are risk takers. And so I've seen guys in the jiu-jitsu community, tough guys, drive drunk, wrap their fucking car around a tree. The one instance I'm thinking about, the driver survived, his friend did not, So the point is, guys, take care of yourself. There's plenty of ways in life that something bad can happen to you. Don't add to it. Don't contribute to it. It's not worth it. And no matter how much of a nut job you are, there's at least one person that cares about you, at least. You know what I mean? And it's not worth it, man. It's just take care of yourself. So yeah, that's
people. I think what people fail to realize about cars is, like, we're so casual and so kind of cavalier about driving every single day because it's so common. You're driving a missile. You're driving a weapon,
dude.
Dude. An accidental or intentional slip up or some kind of accident or whatever it may be can end your life and many others in one flick of the wrist. Well, a slight adjustment to your steering and it's catastrophe.
Ian,
So
Ian, a person running 10 miles an hour, if they blindside you, can obliterate you.
yeah,
10
yeah,
miles an hour, a person, a
a
200
person,
pound man running
yeah.
10 miles an hour, if they blindside you, they could fucking obliterate you. Like
But now,
depending on
yeah,
the size of the person, you could kill them. How about that? Okay. A car? Come on
and
now.
then you have people of all ages, mental states, vision capabilities,
Dude.
intoxications, tiredness, driving. So yeah, I think you have to just be careful no matter when you get in the car, with who you get in the car, and all that. But thank God everything went as well as it
Yeah.
could have. I don't want to say it went great, but it could have been horrible, and I'm sure it was very traumatic for everyone involved, including the person you care about. Just tough stuff, man, tough stuff. But on to a brighter note, Eric had an absolutely incredible idea, as he normally does, and I'd love for you to share that with everyone.
Well, you'll notice that I'm wearing a shirt and it says Pride. And it's June. It's Pride Month, if you will. And despite the fact that I've long suspected Ian of being gay, this is actually not about celebrating Ian's homosexuality as much as it's about. And he could tell you guys about that on his own terms, on his own content. That's fine, okay. But we've decided to give the middle finger to people that want to make the month of June all about being gay, and simply just talk about the real pride, the true pride, Pride Fighting Championships. Okay, those of us that are old enough to remember the legendary mixed martial arts organization that came up in Japan from the mid 90s, and I think probably lasted all the way to about 2008, 2009 before a litany of issues caused it to kind of break down. But some of you guys might be saying, well, hey, who cares? What's the big deal? What we have the UFC, to which I would respond, without Pride Fighting Championships, there probably wouldn't be a UFC. There might not even be a sport. You have to understand that uh, pride is on the rise. Um, MMA is essentially illegal in most places in America, and most of the best athletes were getting paid peanuts to fight in the United States. Okay, Pride kept the torch ablaze for top level MMA competition for some time because they had money, they had an audience, they had a culture that was very much into martial arts, and not just like boxing, like we'd say in America, although that's certainly changed. That appreciated things like grappling and kickboxing and almost like a samurai bushido type culture, and it was a perfect storm of big budget, uh a burgeoning new style of fighting and entertainment, and it literally kept the sport alive until the UFC was able to win the requisite legal battles here in the United States that then allowed it to become absolutely next level to where you see it today. But I would still say to this day, I don't think that anything has been bigger than Pride Fighting Championships in terms of the live events. I mean, we've never seen, and we'll get into this, a UFC be done in front of as many people as a pride fighting event. I mean,
Live, you're saying
yeah,
live,
yeah,
like the
exactly.
crowd
Like
live.
50, 60,000 people, like soccer stadiums, domes. Whereas, MMA here,
Saitama.
again, yeah, Taitama Super Arena,
Oh,
we'll see 15, 20,000
legendary.
people, which is great. But Pride FC was selling out these massive, massive arenas in the late 90s into the early 2000s, and it was truly unbelievable. So there's more to talk about the rise of Pride. I think I want to save a key factor in the rise of Pride for another fight that we're going to go over probably later in the month. But we decided to do, just as like a segment for each show, is pick a fight, like a classic fight, and just discuss the training of the guys, the outcome of the fight itself, maybe the politics around the fight, and so on. So we only got 4 weeks, 4 fights. There's going to be a little bit of overlap, I would say, Ian, because some of these great fighters, they fought each other, right? And guys
Sure.
moved weight classes and everything else. So to get this started, we decided to go over Mirko Krokop versus Vanderlei Silva from the open weight Grand Prix. Okay, now this was, if you were to win the Grand Prix, this would have been the first of 2 fights you had to fight that night. So Krokop went on to win the open weight Grand Prix. He beat Josh Barnett in the finals. He fights Vanderlei Silva in the opening round.
And this is the
Vanderlei
second
Silva,
time they met in the ring.
Precisely. Yes. This is the second, well, but it's the first time under like legit MMA rules. They fought in
Is
like
that
a
right?
bizarre modified rule set, like back in a couple years prior to this. And I believe the fight went to a draw. And listen, I
Yes, it
love
did.
Pride FC, but there's a lot of questionable referees' decisions and bizarre politics going on in Pride. There's
Like
no doubt.
behind the
I mean,
scenes.
behind the scenes stuff that was very, very strange. And we'll get into that in terms of some critiques that I would have of Vanderlei. But regardless, some of you guys might look at this and say, well, Crow Cop is a heavyweight and Vanderlei is a light heavyweight, and this seems like a mismatch. But Crow Cop at this point in his career was consistently weighing in at about 225, and Vanderlei was cutting down from 225 to make 205. So these guys were much more evenly matched in size. It wasn't like, a Brock Lesnar versus a very, very tiny light heavyweight.
Sure. At that time, there were fewer super heavyweights. Like today, the
Absolutely.
heavyweight division is stacked, not stacked, but I'd say it's been notoriously weak in talent, the heavyweight division, throughout the years. But
Yes.
it's always stacked with large people, especially these
Yes.
days in the MMA. It's a big draw. So those heavyweights back then were more light heavyweights than
Exactly.
actual true heavyweights.
Yes, exactly. I mean, you
One
look at
thing about
that's
sorry,
no,
one,
no, go, go,
one
go,
thing
go, go.
about the Japanese fight promoters, they don't give a shit about your health. And they don't give a shit about your health. There was a lot of stuff, really questionable stuff that went on back then, and there was no athletic commission for much of the time or maybe the entire time that Pride was in effect. So to go over there, to take that trip to Japan and fight over there, you had to know what you were getting into. You had to know exactly,
Oh, yeah.
how tough you had to be, what could actually happen to you. There was just a lot of loose rules over there, but it made for a really exciting show. One thing about
Yes.
the Japanese is they're very martial arts centered culture, very honor based culture, even though they might not give a shit about your health, but they put on a good show. They put on a banger of a fight show. That's
They
for
put
sure.
on a great show, and you got to understand with Pride, these guys were getting paid. One of the things that hurt Pride was that it came out that the Yakuza, the Japanese mafia, was heavily involved with the promotion and running of Pride, and this caused them to lose their TV deal a couple years after this event, and then they ultimately went out of business because they couldn't get on TV. Right? No one's gonna pay you can't possibly pay the fighters without advertising dollars, and they lost all their advertising dollars. Now, notoriously, the fighters would be paid in cash, and they would bring their relatives to Japan with them and then duct tape wads of hundreds to their legs and torso and send them back to America with like 10 to 30 grand each on their person so that none of them had to declare the money and get taxed. So like this is just madness. Like imagine you beat someone virtually to death in front of 55,000 people, because the Japanese were also generally really good at late stoppages. Really good at late stoppages. You're like,
That's an oxymoron. Good at late
yeah,
stoppages. It's like it doesn't really go together.
you beat someone to death, okay? You go
Yeah.
into the back room and some tiny Japanese man just dumps a gym bag full of hundreds onto the trainer's table. They're like, "Oh, Mr. Prush, good fight, you good fighter," and you just walk out with a gym bag full of a duffel bag full of $100,000. That's literally what was going on with these guys. So it was totally insane. And as a side note here, because this is always relevant in a Vanderlei Silva fight, especially, the Pride contracts notoriously said on the back in very, very large bold print, "We do not test for steroids." So
I think the translation really was, please do steroids.
yes, exactly.
There might be
Exactly.
a language barrier there. It's up for interpretation from
Yeah.
Japanese
That's a good point.
text
That's
to
a
English
good point.
is you
Just
should do steroids. We
do
encourage
all
it.
of the steroids. and when you look
We
at
also
some
don't test.
guys, look at some guys, you could make a case that some guys were natural, other guys absolutely not. I mean,
Yeah.
Mark Coleman back in the day, totally juiced to the gills. Kevin Randleman, totally juiced to the gills. Mark
Freak,
Kerr,
though.
absolutely juiced to the gills. And Vanderlei Silva, absolutely juiced to the gills, and especially for this fight.
Yeah.
This is the thickest I'd ever seen Vanderlei look. He obviously did not have to cut weight and make 205 for this fight. He was open weight. You could show up at any weight you wanted, and they were going to let you in. And I guess he felt like he had to be a lot bigger even though Cro Cop was about the same size as him weight-wise, if he had gotten through Cro Cop, he would have had to fight Josh Barnett in the finals, and Josh Barnett was a true heavyweight. We're talking about
Tough.
a 6'4",
Tough fight.
255, also on steroids. Both test positive multiple times. Again, love him, but just call it what it is. That's a true heavyweight.
Great fighter, to his credit.
This is a situation where, you would have needed the mass. The reason why this fight came to my mind, Ian, and I blame you for this.
Thanks.
Last week we had a great conversation about levels, and you were like, hey, the 1 through 10 in any sport, the difference between 1 through 10 and 75 through 100 is insane, right? This was one of the first fights that I can remember where a guy that was known as being a great MMA striker fought a legit world-class K1 kickboxing striker. And I thought that it was a masterclass in showing the difference between being the best as a jack of all trades versus the best of a singular discipline, in this case,
yes,
kickboxing. And I remember when this fight happened, and I remember thinking to myself that Vanderlei Silva had almost no chance. The reason being, Cro Cop threw really, really powerful straight punches. Vanderlei was notorious for having a square stance. He would throw these looping haymaker shots that if they hit you, you were dead. But Cro Cop was very quick. He could lunge in, use his reach with the straighter punches, and get in and hit Vanderlei and then be out. He was very good at managing distance, especially in this fight. And he just hit way harder. I mean, he didn't have to sit in the pocket and throw 7 punches like Vanderlei did to do damage. Cro Cop could hit you with a left straight. I mean, he broke Bob Sapp's face with 12-ounce gloves on with a left straight.
Yeah.
Okay, he broke Bob Sapp's fucking orbital bone. Bob Sapp was like 390 at the time. We're talking about steroids. Bob Sapp was like 390 with abs.
390. That's
okay. So
crazy.
Cro Cop had immense power. And I think this was a situation where you saw elite level in one thing versus, okay, you're a good striker, but it's just not the same thing. And a couple years after this, not even, Anderson Silva makes his debut in the UFC, and we see the same thing happen in the UFC middleweight division. An elite striker go against guys that were good strikers for MMA, but they could not hang with a guy who was a professional in kickboxing.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head, dude. Cro Cop had such a pedigree coming in, fighting people like Peter Aerts and Ernesto Hoost. He was competing in K1 and then stopped and spent a lot of time, I think it was a couple of years, taking over 50 fights in amateur boxing because he wanted to make sure his hands and his boxing, his striking with his hands was up to snuff for K1. That was his true passion. Side note, he said that in an interview, he said, kickboxer, Jean-Claude Van Damme's kickboxer and Bloodsport inspired him to get into combat sports. I mean, what a better soundbite for our podcast than that.
Perfect.
I mean, Jesus Christ.
That's perfect.
Yeah, but you hit the nail on the head. He manages his distance really well. He gets the most out of his reach and range. Like a straight arm, a straight elbow punch versus, and it's turned body, straight arm punch versus, like you said, Vanderlei's square stance. Always hooks, a lot of hooks and looping punches. There's something terrifying about Vanderlei, though. A guy who's willing to eat 3 to 5 of your punches to get one on you. Like,
yes.
In that fight, it seemed like he was so tough that he was willing to take a bunch of your strikes coming in just to get you. And that's terrifying. Cro Cop, to his credit, a lot of people would, if the guy wasn't, injured or hurt or at least slowed down by your strikes on the way in, it's kind of demoralizing to see somebody eat your strikes and come through, which is kind of what happened in the first fight, I think, was Vanderlei took a lot of those shots and didn't really affect him that much or as much. This second fight, this one we're talking about now, he was connecting a lot cleaner.
Yes.
And I found it fascinating how Cro Cop set up the left head kick.
Yeah, that's a master. I totally agree.
Right leg hospital, left leg cemetery. Like that classic line, like one of the most iconic quotes in MMA history. Southpaw, and he said in an interview, not recently, years ago, that he threw about 200 high kicks a day. So basically, it was like a reflex. It wasn't even like something he had to like hope would land.
So crazy.
But the terrifying part about that is everybody knew what he was doing. Everybody knew he wanted a high left kick, and they couldn't stop it. And one of his keystone strategies was he would just kick you in the body over and over and over again until you're so traumatized and your ribs are just smoked that you drop your elbow to protect your ribs. And in a second, a trained kickboxer can take a kick from your ribs and put it to your head without that much effort, without that much, change of direction. Terrifying, dude. One of the most
It's
devastating strikes in MMA history.
and
Hands down. Hands
Crow
down.
Cop is a unique guy too, because for most people, and this is understandable, a cage fight, or in this case, a fight in the ring, is the most intense, challenging thing that you'll ever do. Here's a guy who is a member of an anti-counterterrorist SWAT team
What a
that
badass.
stormed, you know, buildings with machine guns, and this
An
is
actual killer. An
yeah,
actual killer.
yeah.
Not
We're
just like
talking
a
about someone
cage
who's,
killer.
I don't want to, besmirch Crow Cop's good name, because I will always be terrified of him as long as he has a pulse. But the truth is, here's a guy that there's a good chance, like you said, he actually has killed people in the line of duty. Or he's seen his friends be killed. He's gone to work with the full knowledge that he may be killed that day. Um, and so Vanderlei Silva's intimidation just not going to work that well against a guy like
No.
that. That's not the scariest thing he's ever faced. He's had a loaded gun in his hand. He's dealt with true life or death situations, and it's kind of funny to me because someone like Vanderlei has to get himself worked up to view this fight as a life or death situation. Where for Crow Cop, it's almost like it's a sport, because that's what it is to him, as someone who's been in these literally, truly situations with terrorists and machine
Real
guns
combat.
in the past. Real combat, exactly.
Mortal
And
Kombat.
this is interesting point considering the current climate. Mortal Kombat, of course, is just. Have you seen the second Mortal Kombat yet? By the way,
No, I
oh,
have
you got to
not.
watch it. Oh, dude,
I
it's so
know.
good.
I'm
You
behind
got
the
to
eight ball
watch
on
it.
that
It
one.
was really good. We'll talk about that some other time. It was really,
All right.
really
I'll
enjoyable.
catch up.
Um, Now, Vanderlei is also interesting because here's a guy that was. I remember back in the day, I would go on like a lot of message boards. This is pre-social media, and always
Sure
read
dog.
about Sure Dog.
The
Absolutely,
forums.
that's right.
Hell yeah.
And there were all these photos of Vanderlei doing like tire flips and sledgehammer strikes, and he was kind of seemingly doing a lot of like, you could say, more modern strength and conditioning stuff at the time. And from what I know about Crow Cop, again, back then it was not nearly as public. It wasn't like today you go on Instagram and they're posting everything that they do. His kickboxing training was a lot more traditional.
Yes.
And was not, he was not doing a lot of the crazy stuff. And certainly the culture in Brazil, I've been to Brazil many times. It's part of the reason why I like to root against Vanderlei, was very pro steroid to the point of absurdity. If you go to Brazil and your doctor wants you to gain weight, it's not uncommon to be like, here's some testosterone and Anavar. Get out of my office. Like, it's totally different than here. It's a beach culture. It's a warmer country in a lot of respects. So people are more vain. They want to look good all the time. Where Crow Cop's from Eastern Europe. Even though Croatia is actually a beautiful country and has beautiful beaches, but like,
It is.
it's just a different type of culture. And the thing that I felt like I could feel the anger through your text messages to me last night, so I want to unpack this a little bit. The thing that always made me angry about Vanderlei Silva, who I really respect as a fighter, he's a total warrior, never quit in the ring ever, incredibly tough guy. But if you were getting into Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu around this time, the sport was understandably dominated by Brazilians. So every day you go to practice, and it's Brazilian guys mad dogging you, telling you how Brazilians are going to kill everybody else. And at
Got
some
it.
point, you've had enough of it. You're just like,
Sure.
no, now I want to see him lose, because I'm sick and tired of being told that everyone else in the world can't fight and only Brazilians can fight. Okay. And so I remember the lead into this fight being like, logically, I didn't know that much about combat sports relative to today, but logically I was like, okay, he's fought Ernesto Hoost and Peter Ertz and Bob Sapp. I don't see how he's going to be afraid of Vanderlei the way some guys were. Vanderlei had that Mike Tyson effect on people. If you
Yeah.
let him get in your head, it could be a real problem.
Yes.
But also, Vanderlei, and this is not his fault, okay? And Crow Cop was guilty of this too, don't get me wrong. He fought a lot of fucking bums, dude. Like if
You all had to. You
yeah,
all had to at that point. It was,
they
and
would
it wasn't your
throw
fault.
bums with you. Whereas, and so these guys had these insane knockouts, these like brutal knockouts, and it led to this notion that the Pride fighters were way better than the UFC fighters. But to give you an example, the 205 division at that time in the UFC, the belt was being kicked around between Chuck Liddell, Randy Couture, Tito Ortiz, Vitor Belfort, all fighting each other with no fights off.
Sure.
You know,
And
you know what
Rampage
I mean?
Jackson.
Yeah,
Rampage
and
was a
well,
little
Rampage
later
was in
into the
Pride.
game, I
He was in
think.
Pride at the time. He would have been.
Okay.
He's probably Rampage is Vanderlei, in my opinion, his most notable victory. He beat Rampage twice. Okay,
They
once
had
in
a
a
big
tournament,
rivalry. Big
big
rivalry.
rivalry, big like
The 4
blood feud.
fights.
But here's the thing: it's almost impossible not to have a big rivalry with Vanderlei because they were all nuts.
Of course.
Shoot to box guys notoriously, like if you were going to fight a shoot to box guy, you know, you're in town for the fight. Like if you see one of them at like a grocery store, they try to like throw down with you. Like if
Wow.
like you're like they were just
Just
crazy people.
psychotic.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
crazy people. And so usually when you saw a guy square off with a shoot to box guy, it got to the point where the other fighter wanted to demolish the shoot to box guy. Like
Yeah.
famously when Forrest Griffin fought Shogun and won, beat him that first fight. There's a point in the fight where he's on bottom and he gets elbowed in the face, and the shoot to box guys are like mad dogging him, talking shit in the middle of the fight. And he looks over his head and just gives the corner the finger and then goes back to fighting because they were treating him like shit the whole week. He had enough of it.
Yeah.
He's like, fuck you. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm here to fight.
Talk
Now,
about a tough guy.
yes, for
Dude,
sure.
One of the most impressive things about Cro Cop in his career, in my opinion, because he was obviously an elite striker, but he admitted that he was not really a great grappler. And he got into the game at 25 years old grappling. He started training grappling a couple of months before one of these mixed martial arts fights in Pride. Couple of months. That's not a lot. Even though MMA was in its relative infancy at that point, you didn't have to be so well-rounded if you were that good at striking. But the second Randleman fight, I know we're on the Vanderlei thing, but the second Randleman fight, he submits him with a guillotine. And Randleman has a serious wrestling pedigree, strong wrestling background, and is, like you said, juice to the gills. He's explosive. Yeah. The opening bell in that fight, if you watch it over again, Randleman comes in for a takedown, and they basically like two rams in the wild. They clash heads. I thought somebody was going to be knocked out right there, but look at how explosive Randleman is in that takedown attempt. It's terrifying. And he was fighting for that takedown so hard that he allowed himself to get into a precarious position with the guillotine. But you just don't expect a wrestler of that caliber to be choked and submitted by a striker. It's just like, you know, you can really overextend yourself in any match.
There's
that's
two submissions or two types of submissions that we'll backtrack. It's very rare to see upsets in grappling because to be able to submit somebody, you have to be able to control them, you know, get on top of them. There's no flash knockouts in grappling. Okay, the best guy almost
maybe a heel hook
wins.
here and there.
Yeah, well, that's my point. The two types of submissions where you could see a massive upset are when guys who are strong and explosive get a hold of your neck, typically from a front headlock position, like a guillotine or maybe a Darce choke or something to that effect, or some sort of straight ankle lock or heel hook. In particular, straight ankle, because heel hooks are technical. If you don't know how to finish them, you're not going to be able to finish them. Or a big gorilla could just get a hold of your ankle and just rip it, and while they're still fresh and there's not a lot of sweat, you could be submitted. And so that's
Brock Lesnar.
So that was a good knee bar though. So that was technical.
That was a knee bar. Okay.
Yeah, that was technical. In this case, this is just Cro Cop, really, really explosive. Kevin Randleman was known for having poor submission defense, and I believe that Cro Cop he worked with Dean Lister, who was an all-time great grappler, and Fabricio Verdum, I want to say, who probably would have said, "Hey, this is gonna be there, so just have this in your back pocket." Like, obviously, if you can get away from him, get away from him. But the guillotine may very well be there, so full send it. And he got his left arm in and strangled him. I mean,
but
listen,
it wasn't
dude,
deep. It wasn't terribly deep. So it just seemed
strong,
like
though. He's
very strong. But Randleman's neck was like 4 feet wide.
Also, dude, when you don't know how to get out of a submission, you're more likely to tap, and your panic levels increase. Yeah, and the worst place to panic is with a choke, because now you really can't breathe. You
Got it.
know, whereas, for example, when Alexander Volkanovski fought Brian Ortega, Ortega had him in a really deep choke, and Volkanovski just relaxed and got out of it. But he had flown one of the best grapplers in the world, Craig Jones, in well, I think they're both from Australia, so Craig would have probably been down there anyway, to prep him for the fight. He spent that time in that position with professional grapplers. He was relaxed in that position. If you never put yourself in those positions, you're going to panic. And when you panic, it's harder to breathe. You're fucked.
Yeah.
Real
Yeah.
simple. Now, I wanted to ask you this
Yeah.
real quick in the sense of, because I want to go over the outcome of the fight, but I wanted to ask your opinion on this. We've discussed this a little bit. At the time, I felt like, oh, Vanderlei's strength and conditioning stuff, like this is really cool. He's doing strongman. And then years later, I saw this Nick Diaz quote, and they asked him, like, Nick, how come you have so many fights? You know, or something to that effect. And he's like, because I don't flip tires and do stupid shit, so I never get hurt. And like, I did think about it for a little bit, and I was like, you know what? Like, there's some truth to this. Like, at what point, especially if we're giving guys like a lot of gear, I think you could make a case that Vanderlei was probably too big for this fight. He was too bloated. I think. At what point are strongman events, if at all, detrimental to the development of an athlete who's using them for like general physical preparation?
It's difficult to say. I would say you're not training for max strength, and that's the biggest distinction. So you're training to be prepared in many areas, a lot of core strength, but like you have admitted with your powerlifting training, it makes you too rigid for
Yes, it
mixed
does.
martial arts. So you run the risk of, first of all, being wildly sore for your martial arts training. So you're risking an injury there. And also, you lose the spinal flexibility or spinal range of motion you need to be grappling and be in a flex position and be hunched and then rotating a lot. Strongmen aren't notorious or aren't well known for rotating. It's
It's a good
very
point.
stiff. You have
It's
to
a good
lock
point.
down your core. So there are some cool benefits you can get from carries and drags and, just let's call it quote unquote functional strength, as much as I hate the term, like things that will actually carry over to mixed martial arts. So there's some value to it. But all in all, if you're practicing martial arts that much, as long as you're conditioned and you have the cardio, like the Diaz brothers are just marathon runners. They don't train
Yeah,
strongman.
yeah,
So they have the heart and lungs to go as long as they need to, and then they practice the skills and they get the strength well enough from their grappling training, from their kickboxing training, the actual skill and uh, adaptations you need from martial arts training. So it's tricky. It's tricky. It's probably a little too risky in most cases, but if you're keeping it a little bit lighter, if you're keeping it like 50% of your actual capacity, I think there's probably value to it, but
okay.
maybe unnecessary at this point.
Yeah, and that's what I thought was so interesting about this fight is that Vanderlei comes in, he's like the most bloated I've ever seen him look from gear. I would imagine maybe he would have looked this way 8 weeks out of a fight, and then maybe he lowers doses on certain things and dries out a little bit, and then cuts the weight. You know what I mean? As opposed to like, just staying super bloated and but maybe keeping his doses a little bit higher. But I was really blown away. If you look at like the size of his face and just how much water he seems to be holding relative to Crow Cop in this, and they kind of weigh the same, although Crow Cop's a little bit taller. There's a point where you're like, with PED use in any sport, where you're like, you know what, that's too much. There's an effective dose. That dose is different for all people, okay? But there is a point where you're like, okay, let's back this off. And I always think about Victor Conti, who's the head of Balco, of course, all the scandals with the Olympic athletes and everything. And I've listened to a lot of interviews with his because I want to try to understand how he managed PED use. And one of the things that he said about Olympic sprinters that I feel like would work for any combat athlete as well is when you would go into competition, you'd go in virtually off drugs, or on the lowest possible dose because you want to lose the glycogen in the water, right? Like if you are get as big and strong as a house, but you're carrying 20 extra pounds, okay? But through manipulation of drugs, we can get those 20, 25 pounds off of you, but the engine is still just as strong. What's going to happen? You're going to
So
move
carry
like a
less.
fucking freight train, okay?
Yeah.
And I do think that there's some truth to that even in MMA. Like, yes, of course, if you're going to be grappling someone, sometimes that size and the clinch matters, but Vanderlei wasn't a grappler.
20
you know.
pounds of body weight makes a big difference in striking.
Yes,
It,
well, in
that's
grappling as
that
well. Yeah,
Yeah, sure, sure. So
yeah,
it can help. I
yes.
don't know if he had the opportunity to use it. I mean, he's just so ferocious, such a savage, Vanderlei. And like, what people don't know about him, he's got multiple records. Even though he has reckless and has kind of like a scrapper brawler style, it worked back then.
Of
I
course
mean,
it did.
he really
That's
met his match in Crow Cop, but he had like the most wins, the most knockouts. I think longest winning streak. He had some outrageous records. I think longest title. I'm not. I think that was the three records that I'm aware of. Or maybe most title defenses. Most title defenses. He
That
has a
that
crazy amount
seems
of
likely.
record.
That seems likely. Yeah, I mean, he was on top of that division for a very, very long time. I mean, they just did not have someone in 205, which I think they called. They called 205 middleweight, which is interesting. They didn't
Is
call
that
it light
right?
heavyweight. Yeah, they had a different name for it. But until he fought Dan Henderson again, which was his next fight
Hendo.
after this, he had not really fought someone who had the skill sets, like the wrestling pedigree and the competency with the hands to get to the wrestling that could really beat him. It was very, very
H-bomb.
challenging. Now, I thought you raised a great point here with Crow Cop. It's like he did something that's so simple in this fight. First of all, he's almost using karate style footwork, and instead of moving side to side, he's lunging in and lunging straight back, which works if you can manage the distance. Crow Cop was very explosive, so that Machida used to fight that way. He would
He's
lunge in and
karate
lunge,
base.
yeah, exactly, lunge in and lunge back, as opposed to a lot of American boxers. They keep the distance the same and they move more side to side. I guess when you have kicks involved, sometimes that bobbing weaving isn't always the best. But he's did a phenomenal job in this fight of lunging in and out, landing single strikes, which when you punch that hard with 4-ounce gloves, they're gonna fuck you up. Okay.
Yes.
And what's really strange about this is he drops Vanderlei and then does a significant amount of damage to Vanderlei's face with ground and pound, just hammer fisting him. Like, that's how fucking hard this guy hit. None of the shots that he's hitting looked glamorous. None of them looked like these like epic Fedor ground and pound shots, which I'm
Yeah.
sure we'll go over sometime this month. Just
Yeah.
these little hammer fists. But it reminds me of Brock Lesnar, who could generate all this power with these 2 inches from your face. And that's really scary, because you're doing all the things you want to do as a grappler, maintaining, controlling distance, making sure they can't get posture, and they're still annihilating your
Yeah.
face.
Yeah.
And that's the beginning of Vanderlei's demise in this fight. His eye gets fucked up. Something happens which is very interesting, which is they would never do this in the UFC. They stop the fight in the middle of the fight to look at the cut. I don't know how I feel about that, because it does change the momentum of the fight.
Totally.
Yeah, which
Totally.
I kind of don't like that, but it is an interesting. The Japanese are literally ready to like get beaten to death, but they'll still stop the fight to check your cut. It's like a hilarious difference in
And
America.
they let Crow Cop recharge. They really let
Yes,
him get his
yes,
bearings, get his power back, and now he had a target. Now he had a real
yes,
target,
yes.
which is
Yes,
above that right eye.
which is a great point. It's on one hand you could say, hey, it helped Vanderlei, but here's the thing: anyone who's been punched knows that swelling is going to come on over time. And they stopped the fight for like 3 minutes, which meant it had 3 extra minutes to swell. So then when they go back into the fight, now the eye is practically closed. And
Shut.
it's
Yeah.
important to note. So this is Vanderlei's right eye. Okay. Crow Cop is kicking him in the ribs with his left leg. Okay. But the eye is closed, which sets him up perfectly for the head kick. He goes that after ripping
Can't
multiple
see it
body
coming.
kicks. Yeah, literally. He's ripping these left body kicks into Vanderlei's ribs. And on the final knockout blow, you see him plant his foot and go to throw the kick. You see Vanderlei bring his elbow down to crunch. His eye is closed, and he just eats a fucking heel to the forehead. And not even in Japan, they stopped this fight right away. They didn't even, they got right in there. They're like, he's dead. It's over. Like, just get, and you could see the foot imprint on the side of Vanderlei's head. There's literally like blood pouring out from where the heel struck him in the head. He went down, and it was
Chin
like,
mark.
it was, dude,
Yeah.
like I remember watching that like the night that it aired, and I was just like, I couldn't believe it. Like the sheer force of it. And then afterwards, Crow Cop's team is like trying to give him a hug, and he's like shoving them away because he's like so intense and so angry. And he has
Yeah.
another fight that night,
Barnett,
so
yeah.
he goes on and
Right.
he fights and he beats Josh Barnett. And I guess there's a lot of things to be said about this fight, but I kind of want to close my comments out with two things. I picked this for a couple reasons. One, I mean, it's a great fight. It's an example of what Ian said with mastery, the difference in levels, and everything else. Two, it was the best Crow Cop ever was. After this was his final night in Pride. Pride went out of
Was
business
it?
shortly after that. He goes to the UFC and he really struggles. He has a very lackluster career in the UFC. Okay. Vanderlei's next fight after this, he goes back down to 205 to defend his title at 205 and gets demolished by Dan Henderson. Okay. Gets his lights put out bad. And he's never the same.
Yeah,
Okay.
from my perspective, once you start getting knocked out like that, you keep getting knocked out like that.
Yes.
It's like Liddell. Vanderlei had a lot of knockouts between the Crow Cop knockout, between the Rampage Jackson vicious knockout in the UFC. Once your lights get put out like that, I think you're more prone, more susceptible to future knockouts. And my closing thoughts on Crow Cop, dude. In 2004, he had 8 fights. He had a fight with Randleman to start the year. He got knocked out brutally, and then he fought 27 days later. Like he forced his way and pleaded with the Japanese to have him fight again right away. Which is, in retrospect, he said it was a terrible idea.
Yes.
He goes, yeah, I wasn't ready. I wasn't. He goes, you got to take, your body needs time to recover after a knockout like that. He goes, but then he won. He basically had one loss that year. And the first fight was Randleman loss, and the 8th fight was a Randleman chokeout that he avenged his loss in the start of the year. Nobody would think of 8 fights in one single year nowadays in MMA, at least. In like Thai boxing, they fight 3 times a week.
8 fights is like Mexican boxer level. But like that's it. Like we're just like bring him in. Bring in Rodriguez. Like he doesn't give a fuck. He's ready to go. Yeah, like we don't care. And he's fine with it too. Like that's how they get down.
He was hungry, dude. He was hungry. It was a different mentality back then. Like he said, that it wasn't about the fame so much. It was more about the pursuit, the chase, like this. The
dude,
craft.
As an aside to this. Oh man, this gets me so excited thinking about this. There's so many things I want to ask you about Pride. Maybe we could talk about a little bit of this as the month goes on.
We got to pump the brakes, yeah.
But there's one thing that I was thinking about yesterday. I was thinking of clips to stack with. I always put an overlay on my videos, and one of them was about PEDs, and so I put the Brock Lesnar Alistair Overeem fight because I mean, come on, that's like the example of 2 of the biggest, most gigantic, muscular guys to ever fight on a truly high level.
Like the epitome of a drug match. Yeah.
Yes, but by the same token, Ian, follow me here. This is going to sound crazy, but there is still such a difference, even with massive amounts of PEDs involved and genetically blessed people, between a jacked athletic physique and a bodybuilder physique. And you think of these numbers. Overeem is what, 6'4"? I want to say maybe 6'5". So. I think 6'4". We'll say. I think he's no taller than 6'4"
ish.
And he weighed 260. That is lighter than Ronnie Coleman weighed on stage at 5'8", 5'9".
That's insane.
And
insane.
When you do look at Overeem's physique in that fight, he looks great. Who wouldn't want to look like him in that fight? But it's actually not really a bodybuilder physique. In a true, it's the farthest.
Physique.
Yeah. It's the farthest you could get in MMA and probably still be a great fighter, like bearing that much muscle. But when you get used to looking at bodybuilder physiques on Instagram, and then you see Overeem. Yes, of course he's a giant, and he's obviously a much better athlete than some random dude who's fucking just jacked and just lifting a bunch of weights in the gym or posing on stage in a bikini. But it does show you that it's still an athletic physique. It's more on the muscular end of athletic. Okay. And even Brock, his physique had like a softness to it that you do see with guys who were doing a lot of endurance shit. A lot, even the most jacked MMA guys generally don't look that hard. Okay. They're lean, but there's a little bit of softness in there because look, there's going to be points in time when you're doing very difficult or demanding cardiovascular training. You run out of glycogen, your body's going to eat muscle. It just happens. That's just that's just the name of the game. So it is interesting. You look at these guys and you're like, wow, they're so jacked. They're so huge. They are. And who wouldn't want to look like the Reem at that point in time, all fucking gassed up on horse meat. But it is, however, like an interesting way to look at it, which is you still have to be athletic. You still have to be able to do the things that you are trained to do.
Yes.
And you look at Brock Lesnar, like these famous clips of him, like in the Minnesota wrestling room, where, yeah, he's big, he's doing like monkey bars stuff and everything like that. It's still not bodybuilder big. It's
Sure.
borderline, but it's still not. When you look at like any random guy on Instagram who's a bodybuilder, you're like, this is another level of absurdity in terms of
Well,
how they look.
I would say Brock is not bodybuilder big and lean, but he probably had to cut to get to 265 for the
Probably.
Overeem fight.
I think that's possible
So
to say. Yes, it's
I'm sure
possible.
he was probably walking around 275, 280 plus, and he had to cut down because his weigh-in. I watched that fight the other day. His weigh-in was 265 on the dot. So
Really? Okay.
I
Okay.
think Overeem just walks around at whatever 255,
Yeah.
260 ish, and I love the iconic first time Overeem comes to the UFC and the first time he weighs in, and then he does the front double bicep pose,
It's
and like
insane.
all the ring girls in the back go nuts, like
Yeah.
because you don't see that kind of physique in MMA ever. And when he remained in the UFC, his physique went away fairly
Real
quickly.
quick. Real
Yeah,
quick.
because
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
jig was up. But
Yeah.
a lot of that bulk for Overeem, at least, really, really helped him in K1 because
I
it
agree.
gave him a shell that a lot of those guys couldn't get through. Like the Semi Schultz couldn't penetrate that
Glad you said that.
big, rounded, the traps,
Hmm.
screen a movie on his neck. That type of. It crowded his space. It crowded his space, and it gave him so much power that if you couldn't get in and you're absorbing his kicks, knees, and strikes, you know, the jig is up. Your
Glad
time
you
is
said.
numbered.
I'm glad you said that. It goes to show you've been very big on, hey, like how you respond to drugs determines, how well you do in sport to a certain extent.
Seems that way
But
from
all
the.
but also, you're right though. But also it's like some guys need to do the opposite of conventional wisdom, and that's move up a weight class. Overeem he was dangerous for the first 3 to 5 minutes of a fight when he was at 205. And I don't know if he was cutting a lot of weight, but he generally tended to gas out. Okay. When he moved up to heavyweight, I felt like he really became world class in both kickboxing and consistently in MMA. Like he obviously, if you're fighting in Pride Fighting Championship, famously he fought Chuck Liddell in the opening round of, I think it was the middleweight Grand Prix, and he was giving Chuck the business until he gassed out and Chuck savagely knocked him out. Okay,
He was skinny looking
yeah, skinny looking.
relative to his later in his career.
Absolutely, absolutely. And so there's this element of, yeah, in his case, filling out more and gaining a bunch of weight actually helped him. And I agree, his chin was questionable. And so his ability to shell up, and he switched probably out of necessity for conservation of energy, he switched from throwing a lot of combinations to single hard pot shots because of his size. And one of the things that I think really set him apart in K1, again, this is just my opinion, you know more about K1 than I do, his knees and clinch work. When he got to the heavyweight level, he was just so strong. And a lot of people don't know this. I believe that Overeem also won the ADCC trials for Europe back in the day. So he was a good grappler. So he had very good strength and technique and leverage and positioning in grappling. And it seemed like it carried over to the grappling within kickboxing, because his tie clinch stuff was just horrifyingly brutal.
It
And it
was.
seemed like at heavyweight, it was just more dangerous. He was just so strong. And that, like you said, that size helped to just shield his chin, because he had problems with getting KO'd and whatever. I'm not judging the guy. Like if Chuck Liddell hit me, I would literally, my head would explode and I would die. Like this is not,
Yeah,
I'm not
this is
even,
not trash talk
yeah,
about
yeah, this is not, we
Overeem.
have to just be honest about what we saw in the cage. He
Of
had
course.
problems with like getting one punched from 205 all the way to when he was a heavyweight. And it seemed like at heavyweight, he was just able, like you said before, to use that size to shell up, to protect his chin, and really, really, like just dominate for a while. And I wish that we would have seen him stay on gear and see what would have happened, but he got caught. It was what it was.
Listen, I've never heard that point made before. It's a fantastic point that he was his pace and his physique and his physical ability was more meant for heavyweight,
Yeah.
even though he had to grow into his body
Yeah.
because he was very slender when he fought Chuck Liddell. Slender. like kind of like
Yes.
a I wouldn't say Anderson Silva looking, but like definitely if you took a picture of him then versus the first UFC weigh-in, people would not believe it's the same person.
I
It,
absolutely agree with you. Yes.
it's actually
Yes.
it's a stark difference between the
It's a
two.
huge, huge difference.
And probably
And
40 to 60 pounds of difference, maybe. I mean, of
you know, I
muscle, and he was
I wonder
leaner.
how much he was cutting. Well, yes, that's the kicker. Was he was leaner and bigger. It wasn't just like oh yeah, he just put on 40 pounds of bulk and he just like for example when John Jones moved to heavyweight, it wasn't all good weight.
He's thick.
Some of it was just getting thick, trying to just make the weight, just try to get
Exactly.
and stay at the weight class. But like for Overeem, for sure, he was meant to be a heavyweight. He was a big person, and he was also one of those guys. You see someone who's very skinny but has a big frame. That's someone who's meant to be huge. He was
Yeah. Well,
lean and had this long range. He could grow into it. It's not like
sure.
a Husamar Paul Harris when like where
Oh,
he's like the guy is preposterous. Like he's 5'8", 230. It's like this is not going to work for MMA though because
yeah.
you can't. The reach is just a huge problem.
What is his nickname? The tree stump or the fire hydrant? What do they
Toquinho,
call this guy?
Toquinho, Toquinho, the tree stump.
Tree stump. I I used to love watching him fight because he was, I think, kind of retarded, and he would just grab someone's ankle and twist. And even though the ref was tapping on him and like trying to get him off, he would just continue to twist. Like that's something you got something wrong with you. I feel like at that point,
Dude, he
you're
would gouge people's eyes. That was the thing when he
oh,
fought Jake
just a dirty
Shields.
fighter.
He gouged his eyes. He's just a crazy person, dude.
Yeah,
But I'll say this, and then I think I have something else I want to ask you about, but not MMA related. His outside heel hook, I guess you could say system that he just like kind of instinctively invented was later studied quite a bit by John Danaher, and a lot of the outside heel hook stuff that you see in top level jiu-jitsu now was invented by, if not inspired by, Paul Harris. Like
wow,
I couldn't, I'd have to like be on the mat to demonstrate it to you, but like
sure,
I use his, I guess you could say, system that he kind of figured out instinctively all the time. And it was taught to me by Jason Rao, and he learned it from John Danaher, who had studied Paul Harris's heel hook system both in ADCC as well as in the UFC and mixed martial arts. But for sure, as someone who has been heel hooked and who has heel hooked others, not letting go of the submission, that's just a dick move. This
seriously,
isn't just like, oh, I didn't hear it or something. Like, okay,
sure,
every now and again, I get it, but like when you've obliterated 8 guys' knees after the fight is over,
yeah,
it's kind of like, all right, dude. Like we kind of know, we know.
yeah, yeah. I
Yeah,
mean, you're jeopardizing that person's livelihood for the next 10 years. It's really really
dude.
selfish,
All
really
right, I'll
selfish.
leave. This is a
So
really
so what
funny
was your question?
Paul Harris. This is a funny Paul Harris story. I'll leave you with this.
All right,
In I think it was the ADCC that he won. It might have been like 2011. I don't remember the year. Um, or I no, I think he took silver. I think he took second. I think he lost to Andre Galvao. He was facing a guy named Dave Avalon, last name Avellan. And when you wind up in a heel hook, a lot of times guys will roll to avoid the pressure of the heel hook. So Paul Harris gets David Ellen on an outside heel hook, and they roll off the mat. Okay, and the referee is telling Dave Ellen, "I want to restart you in the middle of the mat with the heel hook fully locked in, where there's no inertia or momentum that he had generated to try to escape the knee torque." Avellin, unfortunately, agrees to this, and Paul Harris explodes his knee in about half a second.
why did they restart it?
Grappling's always had this problem. It's like, what are the rules? Like in the sense of like, if you roll off the mat, do we restart you in the exact same position? That's kind of what they're thinking. To me, this shows like maybe that was the rule for that particular tournament. But as someone again who's been on both ends of the heel hook in this position, big difference when someone knows that they're fucked and they roll, and as they're rolling, they're trying to pull their leg out versus when you cinch your legs down and kill the roll and then rip the heel hook. And that's exactly what they did. For whatever reason, he felt like he had to agree to it, and it annihilated his knee. And I remember there was like an interview with him in like the hotel afterwards or something, and he talked about how like Paul Harris kept trying to like give him a hug and like kiss him afterwards, but the hugs were like too aggressive, and he was like smacking him on the head, and he was like, "I'm going to, like, you have to leave me alone.
Yeah.
Like, I'm going to get a gun. Like, you need to leave me alone. You were
Yeah.
insane."
Yeah. It's
Like,
insult to injury at this
like
point.
no one I've ever known would have ever taken the opportunity to train with him because they were too afraid.
That makes sense.
Yeah, like
I
just
wouldn't
too
want to
afraid.
fight him or train with him
Yeah,
or even be
exactly.
in the same room
I'd
with
rather
him.
fight Chuck Liddell. Like, at least I'll get one punched. He's probably not going to beat me to death after the fact. I'll take my money and I'll go home.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
like, it's fine. Okay, I mean, again, it sucks or whatever. Okay,
Of course.
but it's not to have some hooligan ripping on my knee after I've tapped 10 seconds ago. Like, dude, that is a world of the amount of pressure that you can create on someone's knee, or really any submission, but especially with a heel hook, with any submission that involves twisting. What the general problem is, by the time you feel pain, there's already damage.
Got it.
Hyperextending submissions, usually you'll feel pain, then you tap and you'll be okay. But when you like a Kimura or a heel hook twisting submissions, dude, by the time you feel pain, you're already looking at some damage. And if someone's not particularly mobile, right, which happens, okay, it doesn't take a whole hell of a lot of rotation
Yeah.
to really fuck somebody up.
So you have to
And
preemptively tap to
yeah,
prevent
you have to
injury.
know. You have to know. Like, and
Damn, that's
dude, there were times when
hard.
I'll put someone in a Kimura, and as I'm applying the pressure, I could literally feel that they are not mobile, and I just stop, because it's like you could tell if you keep going, the shoulder's going to explode.
Oof.
You could feel it, and it's always with like bigger dudes with like more of a bodybuilding background.
Sure.
You feel the tension almost in their pec as you go through, and it's like you're going to injure this person, so you just hold it, and you just kind of tell them like it's over.
It must be like what a physical therapist feels when they start to push on people, like
Exactly.
that resistance, the resistance you get from the joint
Yes.
and from the
Exactly.
tissue associated.
Exactly.
Damn, dude, damn.
I felt that many times on people's shoulders, and it's just kind of like, and you have to be careful, because there are a lot of people that start jiu-jitsu that they will injure themselves. Like, they will flail around when you have them in a Kimura, and they'll throw themselves forward and Kimura themselves.
Damn.
So even if you're
just not knowing
yeah,
what they're going
even
into.
if you're holding the resistance at a static level where they're not going to be injured, in their desperation to get out, they will throw their weight in the wrong direction and torque their own shoulder. And it's like, I've never done that to myself that I can remember, but I've had guys do that with their knees and with their shoulders, and it's like, you can't let go of the submission fast enough.
Yeah.
What are you gonna do? They just detonated their own shoulder. Like, it's brutal, dude. Yeah, you feel
That's
really
why
bad.
Yeah, that's why I've always been interested in wrestling and jiu-jitsu and grappling in general and trying to practice it. But I just got back into striking and practicing my Muay Thai recently because I've been actually fired up and inspired by our podcast. So I've had this nice Fairtex Thai banana bag in my home gym for a long time now, and it's been fucking collecting dust for some time. And I got the itch recently, and I got to tell you, it's like a great way for me to sharpen my skills and also do cardio that I don't do cardio ever. So it's like a nice way to inadvertently get cardio in. So I'll just jump rope in between rounds, and then I'll just do heavy bag rounds, teeps, round kicks, strike. It's fun. It's fun. I don't have to worry about the brain damage of when I used to spar every single week and come home with a throbbing headache. If I wasn't going to take, striking into actual competition, there's no reason for me to get hit in the head every week, I felt. So
I think that's
why
a smart move.
sparring.
That's why I stopped
for
boxing.
years.
That's why I stopped boxing.
Yeah, I boxed. Yeah, I boxed for years and did Muay Thai for years, and I was just like, "What am I doing? I gotta."
Yeah.
And then I got into strongman, and it kind of just completely took me away from martial arts.
It satisfies the same type of urge to a certain extent, and it's all encompassing, and it's just minus the brain damage. I could recall times that I would go spar at the boxing gym that I trained at, and like the day's memories would have been beaten out of me, and I'm like,
yeah,
and at some point you're driving home. I mean, just to be totally honest, it kind of makes this podcast come almost full circle. You're driving home. It's almost like you're drunk. Like,
I know.
Every headlight looks huge, and you're like, I have a fucking concussion right now. Like, I should not be driving. Like, you know what I mean? And when you're the new guy, you're going to get hit. You're going to get tuned up. That's the main reason why I went all in on grappling, which was just, you can go hard every day if you so desire, and at least have still functionality of your brain. And from a
Yes.
self-defense perspective, if you ever get into a fight, you're going to be dealing with someone who's exploding and going all out. And so you always have that practice of wrestling, grabbing onto someone who's going berserk, especially if you train with
Yeah.
white belts a lot, But it's
Okay.
funny you say that. I started doing something the other day. I'm hesitating to bring this up on the air because then I like really have to do it. It's like I'm like
Accountability,
committed.
baby.
Um,
Accountability.
I told myself I was gonna run 1 mile a day for like at least the next 90 days.
Okay.
Could be 1 mile, could be more than 1 mile. Okay. The weather is so nice here now.
Nice.
So like this
Finally.
morning I finished up on the mat, just like literally put on my running shoes, ran through the neighborhood around the area, went back to the gym and showered and came here to do the show for you guys. But Ian, you're kind of like my therapist in this regard. It's just like, and I know you're so sick of hearing this, and I don't blame you. I just every time I start to get really committed to like being big, I just don't feel well. I just don't
No.
feel
Yeah.
well. And it's so easy to look at social media and I get it, man. And you see everyone is like enormous and moving all these crazy big weights. And I'm not willing to be bad at jujitsu. Like I know how much my jujitsu would have to suffer if I wanted to be 265 again and moving like crazy big weights. And you know what, Ian? I can't get as fired up for it as I used to in terms of like hitting mass PRs and everything else. I still want to look good. I still want to look shredded. I still want to look like I have some muscle on me. But I'm like, I keep going back and forth in my head. Like, we've always talked about how training to maintain sucks. And it's like, I always want some physical attribute to push forward with here. And it's kind of like, should I do that with like running? Like, I was listening to this podcast the other day with Lance Armstrong, and it really made me think about this. He was talking about why he was such a good cyclist and things that he looks for. First of all, haters of Lance will say Lance got more out of PEDs because he didn't have like a great VO2 max, of course, relative to other people in Tour de France. His VO2 max is amazing. We're just, we're not, it's like
Of
talking
course.
about, you don't have the fastest fastball in Major League Baseball, but you throw 95 miles an hour. Like, shut the
Yeah.
fuck up. Like,
Pretty damn good.
it gets the job done. Okay.
Yeah.
But he had a freakish lactate threshold. That was his thing. His body's ability to clear lactate from the system was elite for world-class cycling. So yes, oxygen delivery not the best. Fatigue reduction was the best. Okay. And he was talking about how he also felt that he's 5'10.5", he says. He has unusually long femurs for someone who's his height and a short torso. And he has found over the years that long femurs are very good for both distance running and cycling because the lever is longer. You get more power on a push down on the pedals. And it's just like, I would love to see if I had gotten into endurance stuff at a younger age, what I could have done, because I do think I have better genetics for that than strength.
You've told me in the past that
Yeah,
you have a
I get good
predisposition
at it
for
quick when I
endurance.
start to do it. And
Okay.
I think a lot about like you in this context. This podcast I was listening to was Lance talking to Chris Long, who's a Howie Long's son, who Chris Long also played in the NFL. And Chris Long had said he felt like his personal endurance made him a good football player, that he had above average lungs for an NFL player. But he was like, I just could never commit to it because I have ADD and I can't possibly just run for that long. And you've said that. I don't have that problem.
My big problem.
I really honestly don't have an issue going out and running for an hour or hour and a half. Like, it's the only issue is, do I have the time? Is my body conditioned for it? Right? Like we've discussed this. Are my shins and knees and ankles ready for it? Probably not, which is why I figured if I run a mile a day to start, that's 7 miles a week. That's nothing. You got guys running 75 miles a week. I mean,
Yeah.
it's
I
just,
train ultra marathon runners, and it's just dumb.
man.
It's
Yeah,
dumb
it's
how much they run.
insane mileage that they put on their
Yeah.
body. But I
Where does your
do,
mind go? That's what because my
yeah,
ADHD would
dude.
not allow me to do it.
And that's
And
what Lance was saying.
yeah, I was forced to run. So in high school, I was doing boxing and football. On the boxing seasons, I would just when I wasn't doing football, I would box. And I would wake up before high school. I actually give myself a lot of credit and ran 5 miles before school. But then for football, they would use running as punishment. So
Yes.
I always associate running with punishment. All right, you went off sides, do a lap around the school, whatever it was. You'd always
Mhm.
get dinged for doing something stupid on the field with running. So
Yes.
I can't now in my brain, I can't wrap it to something positive because it was always something negative. Does that make sense?
Oh, makes perfect sense. I mean, dude, like, this is not gonna be, this is good. You can I'll allow the audience to I'll clip this out and allow the audience to pummel me. Dude, I literally never eat vegetables. Ever. And it's and ever. Okay. And it's for this precise reason.
All
My
right.
parents would be like, it's similar, not the same. When I was a kid, my parents would be like, you are not allowed to leave the dinner table until you eat all your vegetables. And so I would sit there for hours and they would
A
just like
battle of
yeah,
wills.
they would just stare me down and it was just like I'm not eating this fucking broccoli and they would be like no, we're not going to microwave it. You're not allowed to put any sauce on it. Eat the fucking broccoli or whatever. It's like cold, disgusting
Cold.
broccoli. I'm like 8 years old. You know what I mean. Just battle the wills. And I swore to myself, just like you about running. I swore to myself that when I had autonomy over my diet, that I would never eat a vegetable again. And lo and behold, I have delivered on that promise. Okay, I have not had a vegetable since I've had a learner's permit. Like the second I had control, I was like, I'll eat all healthy fats. I'll eat healthy carbs. I'll eat clean proteins, but I'm fucking never eating a vegetable again. I go
Yeah.
through periods where like I'll buy like vegetable powders, like things like that to get the
To
antioxidants from
fill the
them,
gap.
whatever. But dude, like I see people all the time. Oh yeah, have some broccoli. I'm like, you eat broccoli voluntarily? What the fuck is wrong with you? Like you
Yeah.
actually think this is no? You have been brainwashed, sir. This is not good. This shit is disgusting. And the fact that you believe it shows that you're deranged. And I get, and that's the thing. My broccoli is your running. Like I get it,
Got it.
dude. I totally
Yes.
understand. Like
Yes.
your brain cannot comprehend why somebody would actually choose to do this because it was beaten into you. Like every time you make a mistake, go run. I didn't play team sports like that. You know what I mean?
Sure.
So I never developed that situation. In fact, as extroverted as I am, I do enjoy my alone time and like endurance sports or certain whatever cardiovascular activities they become really good alone time. And
That's
it's
fair. That's a
that's
good
a
point.
real thing.
It's a good point.
I wish like this is why we're planning on moving, to Virginia. Like I'm excited about that because nice weather would make it easier for me to be able to be outside and run more frequently. I want to see how well I could do on a bike, but you can't bike in New York, dude. You
No,
can't.
the
You
potholes
it's
alone.
yeah.
Just
Like
that one
you'll be
hazard.
you'll be killed.
Yeah.
You'll be killed. And here's the thing: even if you do get to your destination safely, it's not a workout. It's like it's just purely transportation and survival. You're not like oh I'm
Too much
doing
stopping.
a threshold run today. No, yeah, exactly. You
Like
have to
too much
stop.
at the end of every block. You got to stop. You got to at the red lights. You have to stop and like jog in place like an asshole. You just it doesn't work. You need open
Yes.
space. Yeah, I
Mhm.
couldn't agree more. I couldn't agree more.
And so I'm kind of like, do I start to see like oh like how how high can I push like my VO2 max or something because no homo. It is Pride Month after all, and I did out you at the beginning of the show, so now
So yes, homo.
I'll out myself. But
I knew it.
there are like a lot of like you could say hybrid athletes. I hate that term, but that's what we'll have to
Yeah.
use just for the parlance here. Uh, that have amazing physiques. Yeah,
Remember
obviously
Alex
they're
Viada?
yeah jacked,
Remember that guy?
jacked, yeah. But
Insane.
other guys now too that are like kind of proving that you don't have to be like a string bean and look like something could just anything could just bowl you over if it touches you and still have good cardio. And it's like if I still want to be good at jiu-jitsu, if I want to be able to train my kids with other stuff aside from just powerlifting, maybe it would be good to accrue this knowledge. But the real question is always identity. It's can you deal with that fact when your body starts to shrink? Can you look yourself in the mirror?
Yeah.
That's the toughest part, man. It's
Well,
just like, oh, that shirt fits differently. For me, it's like, man, my jeans are too loose on my legs. My legs are always like big, and it's like, how am I going to handle this? And then
quit.
before I know it, I'm eating more. I'm eating more food again, and I'm trying
Yeah.
to stack up as much as I possibly can. But then I'm like, I don't want to compete in bodybuilding. I don't want to compete in powerlifting anymore. Like, where do I go here? I'm just
What
getting
if you
pulled
thought
in a
about it
million
differently?
directions.
what if you thought about it as running feeds your skill and capacity in grappling? Like the Diaz
Yes,
brothers, you use long distance running to make sure that you are an endless motor who never has to stop. Like, do you
for
think that would
sure.
help push you to your black belt quicker, or is it just more of a skill thing?
I'll be honest. I think it's both. I think it's always a skill thing, but
Okay,
at
that's
at,
fair.
at the top level, and I say top level, meaning in this case black belt level, not elite and world class like black belt level, just a regular
Okay,
bad black belt. These things are always tied. Like as an example, when it comes to say like the guard, both passing the guard or utilizing the guard, I have definitely developed a style that is very efficient, but sometimes very slow because I don't want to gas out.
got it.
Okay. And so, like, my style can be very defensive sometimes because I'm so concerned about managing energy. Because when I came back to jujitsu, it was right after I was done powerlifting. I was 260 pounds. I had no gas tank. And it took me years to build it back up again. So I realized I have no cardio. If I don't go slow, I will not survive these classes. Like period. Like there's no way. And so I ingrained a much more slower, methodical style. Whereas my first run through jiu-jitsu, I never weighed more than 210, and I competed as low as 187. And at that point, I
Light
was
for your
like I
height.
was I was like a maniac. I was just a ton of movement. I was a cardio machine at that height. It was like my cardio was like my number one asset. So, it has point is that yes, physical limitations and physical strengths will always bleed over into your style. Always.
Understood.
Okay. Like you look at someone like Gordon Ryan as an example. Gordon Ryan is not a very flexible guy. He does not play a crazy flexible game when it comes to his guard. Okay. Physical attributes in any sport can help make up for technical deficiencies, or they could just determine what type of style you're going to have,
I
right?
was
You
going to
know,
say
you know
that
what
it
I
shapes
mean?
your
Yeah.
style.
Yeah. Like I was watching Joe Calzaghe versus Roy Jones Jr. the other day. I don't know if you remember Joe Calzaghe.
I don't.
You should look him up. He was an amazing, I want to say light heavyweight, or I don't, maybe he fought at 175, and he retired undefeated, had a lot more in the tank, and could have taken a lot more big money fights, but just didn't want to have brain damage and retired. And he kind
I
of
get it.
fought like a Diaz brother. And there's a particular fight against Roy Jones Jr. Roy Jones drops him in the first round, and then Calzaghe comes back and just dominates him for the next 11 rounds, and it's all volume punching, just
Peppering
hundreds
shots.
and hundreds and hundreds of punches. And, Roy just couldn't, at some point, if you can't get out of that rhythm, you're fucked.
Yeah.
And I'm sure, I don't think that Roy Jones feels this way, but like I've been on the other end of that where it's like the guy punches you once or twice and you're like, oh, that's not that bad. I won't really address it. I'll keep looking for my in here. Yeah, 500 punches later. Yeah, it is that bad.
I think
It
once the momentum swings in a fight like that, it's
Yeah.
hard to turn it back around.
Yes.
Once you get on your heels, so to speak, it's really
Yes.
difficult to turn the tides on the momentum unless you get one big shot that disorients your opponent that you can actually start to mount your attack again.
Dude, this is totally off topic, but
Yeah,
I have something else I want to say that's just totally crazy. But I will
please
say
go for it.
I'm going to go for the mile a day challenge for as long as I possibly can.
Okay,
Some days I'll just run a mile. It's really not that hard. Just as long as I'm warmed up, just put my shoes on, run, and come back home. It's really not
that's
that hard.
7 minutes
Okay.
for you. What do you get?
I could, well, if I'm in shape, I could probably do 7.
Okay,
Like there's been a couple days where I've used the treadmill, and that's kind of fake. It's like
yeah,
it's
fake news.
way easier. It's
Yeah,
way easier. You just get your foot down, and the treadmill propels you, as opposed to
you're
actually
you're
having to run.
you're being fed the ground.
Yes,
It's like
exactly.
someone's turning the world for you, and you're being fed the ground.
That's a funny way to look at it, dude. Dude, do you ever wake up, you go on Instagram or whatever, you're just like, what the fuck is wrong with people? Like the other
Every
day,
day.
dude. So I reposted that reel, uh what PEDs would Batman be taking?
Oh yeah.
Okay, dude, these fucking people get like there is literally people who were like enraged uh that you would imply that Batman would take steroids. It's like he's not real. He's not real. Like I don't understand. Like people, I'm getting literal hate messages. Batman is natural. You're just a bitch. Like, dude,
I saw you post that on your story.
what do you
Let's go to
mean?
Gotham and ask him.
Yeah,
Let's just
like,
go.
what are you talking? Like, the extent to which people have no lives, nothing going for themselves except for the fictional characters that they worship, and how invested they are. Like, I would say, if you were defending the honor of a real person that's not related to you, like a professional athlete, to that extent, I would still say you're going too far. But at least, like, Barry Bonds is a real person. Okay, at least at least Mark McGuire, real person. Alistair Overeem, real person. Okay, yes, you're probably going a bit too far defending their honor excessively, getting in the comments or whatever, get blah blah blah. But like, to get mad that someone was like, "Yo, like Batman was probably taking PEDs," or like the other clip that I posted, but just us, you and I having some banter about Batman versus Superman. People are like, you probably voted for Lex Luthor, didn't you? Okay, you probably read, like, they were accusing me of being like a reader of some newspaper in Superman world that I guess is like the right wing anti Superman. I have no idea. Like, you probably read
Yeah.
the daily what I don't even know the
Daily
name of it.
Bugle, whatever it
Yeah,
is.
yeah, exactly. I'm like, what the fuck? Like, what? None of this is real. Like, this is guys. Like, Superman is not real. We have to we have to stop. Like, I forgot that you go into this territory, it's literally like insulting somebody's religion. Like,
Yeah.
that's how they take it. Like, the way that, like, a devout Christian, like, if you insulted Jesus Christ, they'd be upset. That's how these people view, like, Batman.
Yeah.
That
It's kind of scary. It's kind of scary.
it's a problem,
I guess
Ian.
there are worse
Okay,
things
like,
to worship, but definitely scary that they would take it upon themselves to reach out to you and send you hate mail. I got hate mail recently because of one of the clips that I posted. One guy said it was preposterous that I would have trained 25,000 hours. Like, I've trained people. And I clarified this, even though it's pretty clear in the video, that I've actually coached 25,000 hours over the course of 20 years, which is not,
yes,
20 years is a long time. It's not that crazy. So he was just so hung up on the math, he couldn't figure it out. Somebody else commented, yeah, it's if you train 3 hours a day for 5 days a week, whatever it is, for 22 years, that's tracks, whatever. So then he was like, all right, how about we go race to 405 bench press? Whoever wins, the other one deletes their Instagram account. And I'm like, what's happening right now? He goes, oh, for somebody who's a trainer, you look like Ellen Page or Elliot Page. Who is that? It's like one of the,
that's the
I guess.
tranny that was in the girl that was in Inception, who later became a transgender man.
Okay, so he's
Okay,
called me,
yeah,
I guess, a frail tranny.
yeah,
And then he dropped a comment that made it all make sense. He's like, you're behind in every metric on somebody who's a junior in high school. I'm like, there it is. You're a junior in high school. So you're trolling me. And I'm like, I'm actually feeling weird about myself. I'm like, am I a tranny?
yeah,
Am I a
dude,
tranny? I'm
dude,
not sure. But at the end of the day, I'm like, dude, obviously you're a little confused. Have a wonderful day. I wish you well on your journey in lifting. And I kind of ended it there. And then he kept like, you can tell he scrolled back on old posts of mine and would comment hate mail on old, like a year ago posts. Like, this is bullshit. This is a lie. Like, all right, dude, come on. No
dude.
one's looking at those posts anyway, so you're
You
only
have
hurting
to,
yourself.
if you're not naturally a narcissist, which you are not, and I am not, you have to develop an ability to just, like, not care. And I will
Yeah.
say that as I look at when people comment on my stuff in a really negative way, uh, I mean, I used to always look at their profile. Now I still do, but not. It's not a guarantee. And I always look at it and I'm like, yeah, this tracks. You're miserable. Like, this is
Yeah.
sad.
Yeah.
This is sad. And I think just a good kind of point of conversation here. Um, so, like, I put up a post about Lance Armstrong last week and was saying, this is why Lance Armstrong dominated, because he was the best. It wasn't just because he took drugs. Knowing that it would be a lightning rod and knowing that people would get really upset and blah, 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 whatever. That's coming. You talk about Lance Armstrong or Barry Bonds, people are going to get really upset. But I realized something. Like, I've never been, I have never been world class in something, not yet. I do think we have the potential to do something great with this podcast, and I'm
Agreed.
very proud of my speaking and communication ability, and I want to keep honing that. But I've always at least tried. I've tried hard at everything I've ever done. That I would, at least anything that I voluntarily put myself into, especially with regards to training, I've always tried really, really hard at. And So I know what it means to go all in on something. I know what it means to make sacrifices. I know what it means to put the blinders on and only care about that one thing. And you realize that a lot of the people that are throwing stones at Lance Armstrong are actually people who've just never tried at anything. And they're incapable. They might even have an IQ that's too low for abstract thought to put themselves in that guy's position and ask themselves what would
Okay.
they do.
Okay.
And like, you know, I look at Lance's story, and it's so fascinating because he was a LeBron James, Michael Jordan, Michael Phelps tier athlete in terms of
Yeah.
fame. I mean, like if you're
Dominance.
like for our age, he was world famous. If he wasn't like a local baseball player who was famous if you for the Yankees, but he was not like, but not
And
he
for a
was.
sport that nobody cares about.
Yes,
Like
I mean, dude,
cycling is not a popular sport that
he
people
was
are
in
like
fucking
soccer or
dodgeball.
baseball.
He was in
Exactly. Yeah.
dodgeball.
Yeah.
Like I was watching
Yeah.
that scene yesterday where it's like, hey,
Great scene.
Aren't you Peter LaFleur? It's like
Yeah.
Lance Armstrong. Yeah, I'm a big fan of yours. I'm really pulling for you against those jerks from Globo Gym. And he's like, he's like, actually, Lance, I'm gonna quit. He's like, I remember one time I thought about quitting when I was diagnosed with brain, lung, and testicular cancer, all at the same time. But through the grace of God and help of my friends, I got back on my bike and I won the Tour de France 5 times. What are you dying from that's keeping you from competing? And
Pride. It seems
he's
like
such a
pride,
terrible actor. He's
Lance.
such a
Yeah.
terrible actor. It's just, oh my God. But
But he
that's how
delivered that
famous
line
this
just
guy
the way
was.
he should have.
Yeah, like it's just he was so famous was my point. And
Well,
when I put
Livestrong was a big thing too. His charity, he did a lot
dude,
of work there. But so
and-
somebody made a comment. I don't know much about Lance Armstrong, but somebody made a comment on our YouTube channel that I want you to address.
okay,
They said, nobody hates Lance Armstrong for doing drugs. They hate him because he's I'm paraphrasing, a despicable human being who ruined the lives of his teammates for ratting him out. So how would you
I will
address
address that.
that? I mean, I
I
don't know.
will
I
address
guess you're a
that
fan of Lance
specifically.
Armstrong.
So, first of all, I was fortunate enough to get a follow from George Hincapie, who was Lance's main teammate and training partner, and to this day still works in podcasts with Lance. So now we are officially 1 degree removed from Lance. It would be great to
Nice.
talk to him about this stuff one day. Did he ruin the lives of his teammates? I think 2 of them he did really go after. Tyler Hamilton was one of them, and Floyd Landis was another. Okay, 2 other top tier American riders. And yeah, supposedly he did bully them. He did go after them. He didn't want another American rider to be top tier at that time. And he's admitted to extent to serious douchebaggery there. There's no denying it. But I'm telling you right now, if you look at the comments of the video that I put up, people don't even get to that point, Ian. They just go, he's a cheater. He took steroids. He
Oh,
took EPO.
okay.
Okay. Like, look, the whole thing with Lance that makes it so compelling is what would you do in that situation? That's what makes it so compelling. It's okay. You have cancer. Like, this is true. Okay. He had cancer in 3 different areas of his body. He beats it against all odds. He comes back. He wins the Tour de France and just stumbles into being this global icon because the story is so compelling and so
It is.
thought-provoking. And now, overnight, you go from a guy who is doping and competing in a niche sport to a global superstar with no preparation. No American who got into cycling was ever thinking they were going to be that famous. They were nobody. Okay, there
Yeah.
was no preparation. In basketball, you could see that coming. Okay, in baseball, not in this case. Now, not only are you lying about doping to keep your income high, to protect your career, now you're an inspiration to millions of people because of the cancer story, which was real. He really did do those things, and he really did use his fame to make the experience for cancer patients much better. Livestrong did not do like cancer research. They made like they did like fertility outreach. Like they informed people, hey, this could sterilize you, freeze your eggs, freeze your sperm. We'll pay for it. They made the experience of having cancer, getting cancer treatments much more comfortable, which
Okay.
nobody else was really doing at the time. It wasn't just we're researching stuff. It was like we're making the experience more bearable for the patients and their families. All of that was real. And I put myself in this situation. If you look at the story and you lay all of those things out, Ian, well, you would agree with me, I would assume. And you would really tell me that you wouldn't feel pressured to lie here. I mean, come on,
Of
dude.
course.
It's just, it is what it is. And then dude, some people lie so much they start to believe it. Okay. You know what I mean? Like that's probably what happened too. Like on some level, he's doing the PEDs, but then like he feels like he's being wronged when people are telling him the truth because he did come back from this death sentence and he is an inspiration to all these people. It's a
Yes.
very complex situation. This is not like there's a 30 for 30 on Lance and people compare him to like a bank robber or something. And it's like, it's not the same thing, dude. Like I don't know the guy. I don't know how sincere his apologies are. I don't know the man. Okay. But I do know that if you put me in that position, would I take the drugs to try to win? Yes, I would. Because that's what I've worked my whole life for.
And
Okay.
everybody else was pretty much doing it. I mean,
Everybody was doing
sometimes a
it.
cop out, but like the majority of those cyclists at that level were on some drug.
Okay. Here's a fact for you, Ian. This is to show you the prevalence of EPO. The common number that gets thrown out for EPO is 10%, as in a 10% improvement. Lance has claimed that he would put out 550 watts per kilo, okay, at his peak while he was on EPO, okay? Without EPO, 500 watts per kilo. Okay, so a 10% difference in power output. The difference between the first place winner in the Tour de France, at least at this era, and the last place was 2 to 3% in terms of time. Okay. Now, of course, people could you could get sick, you could get injured. You could have a tactical error. Things are more complex than just purely controlled physical output. Okay, but the reality is, if there's an undetectable drug that has at that time basically no negative side effects, assuming that you're taking it correctly under a doctor's supervision. Okay, these are all preposterously healthy endurance athletes. Well, they're not big bloated bodybuilders or strong men who are like having to maintain 400 pounds of body weight just to try to go do a deadlift or something. Like you've worked your whole life. The difference between going back to America and getting working as a whatever as a mall employee or getting paid good money to ride a bike for a living in Europe is you take these drugs. If you're going to honestly tell me that you wouldn't take them or you wouldn't even consider taking them, I'm going to call you a fucking liar.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Come on, man. Like, and again, the sport wasn't, at least ostensibly, as dirty as it later turned out to be when his era of guys first entered it. So
Okay.
it's so you're winning races, you go over to Europe, and then in that time frame, EPO explodes, and now guys that you were beating last year are demolishing you. Okay. It wasn't like, oh, cycling's a really dirty sport. I'd rather you go down a different path, and someone's like, fuck you, I'm getting into cycling.
Yes.
Like for example, no one does bodybuilding seriously thinking that there's no steroids in the sport. Everyone
Of
knows that
course.
if you do
Of course.
bodybuilding, if you want,
That's
you're going to
just
have to do
you'd be a
steroids.
fool
It's
if you
that
thought that.
exactly okay. It's not like that. It's
Yeah.
you get into it, and then before you know it, this drug gets introduced on a mass scale while you are competing, and now it's time to make a decision. I've just dedicated the last 10 years of my life to this. Okay, do I take a shot of EPO or do I get a new career? And that's before you factor in his life after winning the Tour de France, right?
Got it.
So I just think it's
I
people
think
say crazy stuff, man. They're just they don't
I know.
understand.
I think he would not have been nearly as famous without the comeback story after cancer.
Absolutely.
That's what made him the icon.
Yes. Yeah.
A- If he was the same guy, accomplished the same amount of things, just didn't have cancer, we might not know who he is. Because I couldn't tell you another guy who's won multiple Tour de France's, any other cyclist,
Yeah.
not one,
Yeah.
because of that. But I have a serious question for you.
All right, let's hear it. I love this stuff.
What What do you think about a world where, since there's always cheating, not cheating, if every single sport on earth, every federation just took away the guardrails and the restrictions on drug use, just said, made the best player and team win, would you think that would be better for sports in general or worse?
I'm gonna use the Lance Armstrong analogy here to answer your question. Because it might become a different like we said before, whenever you introduce something to a system, the system changes. What it takes to get to the top of that hierarchy changes, right? So obviously, we'll say bodybuilding as an example. Two guys could have great genetics they have great muscle bellies, great bone structure, great affinity for fat loss, a lot of type 2 muscle fibers. But okay, one of them could maybe eke out the other, who's more disciplined, who has better training, but one of them responds really well to drugs and one doesn't. Drugs get introduced, we know who's going to win, right? So, like, the question then becomes how widely distributed are the drugs? Is the price does the price of the drugs become a serious issue? Does it become an economic issue then? Who could win or who could lose? So one of the things that I always found very interesting about the Lance Armstrong story was, he took all the drugs that the other guys took, but he had access to infrastructure that did make doping quite a bit easier, from what I understand. So, like,
Okay.
as an example, he had a private plane. He could just fly drugs over to Europe and not have to get them past security. Perfect example. Okay, little thing like that. Um, he had knowledge of the fact, I don't know how common this was, that a test for EPO was being developed. And so his coach, a guy by the name of Michele Ferrari, said, hey, we're going to go back to old school blood doping, where we pull out blood, and then we do blood transfusions during the Tour de
Inject it.
France.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, what was Lance Armstrong able to do? Because he was much wealthier than the average cyclist, he was able to rent a house that was on the route of the Tour de France, put a power generator in there and a refrigerator to make sure that the blood stayed good, and he paid someone to stay there and make sure the power never went out and the blood was always kept cold.
Damn.
Okay. Now, did everyone else have the ability to do that? Of course not. Of course not. Now, here's the thing. He had to win it a couple times to get to that point. It wasn't just like he was given that power out of the
From
gate,
the get
and
go.
and then you're
But
just
then
dominating.
yeah.
So
But it became less likely for somebody else to win once he rose in power and
absolutely.
with
Okay,
these resources
absolutely.
that he had.
Yes, he
Okay.
had. That's like it's like an empire. Yeah, like the Roman Empire at its peak. You're not going to beat it. You have to wait till it gets old and falls apart. Okay, they've accrued the resources, but they've developed the resources. They earned them. They won the wars. They won the battles. They developed the
By way
trade
of
routes.
victory.
They have the technology, right? The true answer to that question, though, would it be better if all doping was legal? I'm going to say yes, but with the caveat. I do think there has to be doctor supervision on health markers.
Okay.
Things
So
like,
it's elective, so you can use it or not use it. I'm sure
yes,
most of the athletes who want to be successful will use it. Will end up if this was a real scenario. So you're saying that there should just be mandatory or strongly encouraged doctor
mandatory.
supervision.
Mandatory doctor supervision. So, in other words,
If you want to compete in the sport, you have to subject yourself to blood tests
yes,
to make sure you're staying healthy over the
yes.
years.
For
Is that what
example,
you're saying?
Mark Kerr would tell these stories about how the fight doctor, before he would fight in the UFC, would test his blood pressure, and it would be like 180 over 110 because he was so juiced to the gills.
Stroke level.
And they would be like, all right, go fight. Like, no, that's not allowed in this world that we're envisioning here. Okay,
Sure. This
like
hypothetical situation.
if you're fucking gassed up, no, you're not. We're going to have this under control. Okay, if we look at your blood and you've doped yourself to the point of having a hematocrit of 70 and your blood is now like sludge, no, you can't compete. You can't compete. Like, you have to. I'm sorry, this is crazy. Like,
Yeah.
at some point you've gone too far. You don't know what you're doing. The only thing that it sucks, but I think this is already the case, is you don't want to see athletics be turned into a pure war of who has the most money and the most resources. But I do think that the ship has set sail on that.
Yeah.
The New York Yankees are always competitive. Okay, biggest
Well, the
market,
Mets aren't.
best. Yeah,
And they
exactly.
have
But they
one of the
haven't earned it.
biggest payrolls
They
in
haven't earned
history.
it. They don't have the victories. They don't have the reputation. They haven't
Yeah.
sorted it out.
Yeah.
But again, you could spend money and still lose. But the point is, like, big market teams technically still do tend to have an advantage over small market teams.
Odds are
Yeah, odds
they're going
are
to win.
not always,
Odds
but yeah,
are. Sure.
So it's a really broad question. I just think,
It was more of a thought experiment. I just
yeah,
wanted to understand your perspective.
I also see the downside of it, though, dude. Like, part of me feels like the current system is fine, which is do drug test and the athletes are going to beat it, and that's fine. Like, I don't.
Yeah, I guess if you open it up for completely legal use of these drugs, then you really can't actually compare old records to new records. Would you agree with that?
So
Like, you
that's
can't
been
compare
done.
like what?
That's been done. I don't know if you know that. So the Olympic weightlifting, the records. I'm going to get the years wrong. We'll say it was the 70s, but say this happened in the 70s, but it was going on, of course, prior to the 70s. At some point, they realized that every Olympic weightlifter has been on anabolic steroids since they'd come out in the 50s. And they had no drug test for them. And they started drug testing, and they realized that no one was ever going to break the world records. Okay, because guys were just literally juiced to the gills, as opposed to, like, just a little bit of whatever they can get away with. That's when they changed the weight classes so that there were no world records. They had
So
to
they could wipe the records in a certain way
yes.
and start fresh.
They changed the weight classes, so they were like, all right, well, there's just new weight classes. The old ones are
Interesting.
retired. Because, yeah, at that time, come on, if you got a guy that's training for the Olympics and he's taking 2 grams of gear and he doesn't have to worry about getting caught, okay, and he's just taking not just whatever he wants and whatever's best. Remember, we've said before, when you introduce drug testing, you're not necessarily taking the best drugs. You're taking the drugs that you know you can get away with. Okay. Back then, you were just taking the best drugs, or at least what you thought were the best drugs, because there was no testing. So they eventually had to just wipe the weight classes. You'd probably need
I didn't know
something
that.
like that. Yeah. Again, I'm sure it's not something that's heavily advertised. I don't want everyone to know that the sport was like completely dirty and like worse than cycling, like to the point of where we can't break the records. And then the thing with Lance and everything too is like the guys are doing the Tour de France faster than ever now. And everyone's like, oh, fuck Lance, fuck that whole generation. It's like, dude, you're not beating these guys' records just eating Wheaties and drinking Gatorade, bro.
Yeah.
What are you talking
Yeah.
about? Like the bikes can only be so light and aerodynamic. The training can at some point the physiology has to change. It just is what it is. But
Yeah.
counterpoint too, I'll bring this up. It's also interesting depending on the sport. Like there's a lot of data, and I would agree with this, that shows that it is actually healthier for you to do the Tour de France on drugs than to do it clean. There's less damage to your metabolism. Okay. Like you are literally osteopenic by the end of the Tour de France. Like your body is annihilating bone mass for energy. Like you are fucked. Like, and keep in mind, you're trying to keep yourself really light for a better, for a better like power to weight ratio on your bike. So you're not eating that much. You're running a marathon a day minimum every day for 23 or 21 days. By the end of this, you are destroyed. But if you're doing things that say buoy your hormone levels a little bit, things that keep your testosterone and HGH from tanking and your cortisol from spiking, that actually does make the athletes healthier. So
Fascinating.
there are arguments for both of these things. Like if you do it totally clean by the end of first of all, I'm not even entirely convinced that like, I don't know how many guys have actually ever even finished Tour de France clean, like taking nothing but food and water. Let's just be total. I'm sure the numbers, it's been done. But keep in mind, when the Tour de France was designed, invented, it wasn't about could you win it. It was about could you actually do it.
Is that
That
right?
was the original concept of the Tour de France was like, if you survive this, you win, basically. Okay. And then it turned into, of course, how fast you could ride it and everything else. But originally it was like, here's just a challenge. Like, can you make it from Europe to North America? We're not tracking time. Just don't die. Just get on your boat and don't die. Like that was literally the mentality with this.
Yeah.
And early guys, dude, they would take really doping the Tour de France. The guys would be in so much pain. They would crush bottles of wine just to be numb and then get on their bike and ride. So terrible for you, but they were in agony. Or they would tie their bikes to bumpers of cars and like paddle up and get the car to give him a pull up a hill and then cut the wire before anyone caught him. So you're talking about like
Wow.
crazy levels of cheating. I think one person even like hopped on a fucking train and then just like got off the train and was like, I win.
Like
All right.
that
And they're
lady
like,
at the
and
New
they're
York
like,
Marathon, right? Was it
yeah,
the New
yeah.
York Marathon?
And they're like,
She
wait a
got in a
minute.
cab.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Oh, classic. Classic. Was that before the chips like in their vest or something like that? Dude, I would do that all day.
Just
Yeah,
gets
take
up.
me
He's
to
like,
the
I
corner
win.
of 34th and
I win.
I did it in a tenth of the time that the fastest male runner could do it.
You want to believe too that the guy didn't even understand like you said, like a realistic time. Like he didn't just break the world record by 5 seconds or something. It was like an hour. Like he finished the marathon in an hour, and he's like, "Let's go, give it to
He's
me,
the
pal."
fastest man alive.
Eating a piece of pizza at the finish line, like crushing some New York pizza.
Looking
Yeah,
refreshed and not
but
tired at all.
but look, man, these are at some point. I mean, you could say like, okay, another example: concussive blows to the head really fuck up your endocrine system. Is it healthier for these guys to be allowed to take TRT? Okay, because their testosterone production gets annihilated from the damage to the pituitary axis. That's an argument that you could make.
On the other hand, if it's floodgates open for testosterone use in combat sports, wouldn't the strikes to the head be much harder and more forceful, and
Maybe.
then cause brain damage sooner than
No one knows.
some people
Again,
not being on
there's
drugs
there's
or
there's
it
there's
being discouraged and reduced.
there is absolutely no perfect system here. You know what I mean? And like
Yeah, it was all
I
hypothetical
I
anyway.
I've heard arguments like Joe Rogan has spoken about this, like you can allow doping, but only to a certain level. So it's like, okay, you can't have a testosterone over 1,000 nanograms per deciliter or something. You know what I mean?
Interesting.
Like,
Okay.
okay, you could have an IGF-1 of this amount and a testosterone of this amount, and anything more than that, we're going to consider illegal. But again, as we've said in the past, some guys, the testosterone's 1,000 nanograms per deciliter, they respond way better to that than
Yeah.
another guy. You know what I mean? So there's
Sure.
there's a lot of differences. Like now you're almost selecting for androgen receptors. Like who has got the better receptors? Like every time you add something, you
Yeah.
change. Like even if you look at MMA, like Pride Fighting Championships versus the UFC. That 10-minute first round in Pride selects for grappling way more than it does striking. Okay. It's very challenging to set up a takedown, pass someone's guard, and submit them in 5 minutes, especially when you know that the next round they're going to stand you up again and make you start from scratch.
Understood.
It's very, very hard to do. It's why you don't
Yeah.
see a lot of great jiu-jitsu in MMA because guys know they can just be really conservative. The fight either gets stood up or the next round starts from standing. Where in Pride, you had 10 minutes to work. That's a long time to be thrown down with someone in a pro. 10 minutes?
That's a very
That's
it's an eternity.
crazy. Yeah,
Eternity.
it's crazy. Pride had knees to the head on the ground, which I think
Oh
should be
man.
in MMA. But what did that select for? Well, guess what? Guys were more apt to try to pass the guard because now you get to that north-south position, you can knee someone in the head. Good night. Worst position you could possibly be in. Okay. Whereas if you can't knee the person to the head, you don't have that threat of the knees to the head on the ground. There's less incentive to pass the guard. Okay.
Okay.
Also in Pride, because there's knees to the head on the ground, wrestlers couldn't just take sloppy shots and then like post their hand on the ground and not get kneed in the head. There are guys in Pride that made a living. Vanderlei was one of them, that they would sprawl and just knee you in the fucking head from the sprawl position because it was legal. That's not legal in the UFC. All of these things change the tactics that the fighters use, right? It just changes everything. It's just I guess Ian, my goal, not my goal, but like I just wish that we people had a more realistic assessment of what it takes to be great at something and how much of it is out of their control. You know what I mean, man? Like we've said this
Absolutely.
before. We said this before. Like Thor, half Thor. Like, dude, he was born to be great. Jay Cutler says this all the time. Like he's like, dude, I was born to do this. Like, yes, I trained hard. I did the diets. I did all the stuff. But like, if you're gonna be Mr. Olympia, like, it's there from the beginning or it's not. You could fuck it up, right? You could not do well. Okay,
Sure.
you could fuck it up. But like, I just don't. There's this thing in America. It's healthy, but it's also not, where we just believe like I could be anything I want. It's like, actually, no, you can't. You could improve at anything you want, but you are either going to be great or you're not. And I know you want to say something, so I'll shut up after this. I'll give you a perfect example of what I'm talking about. Like people will look at like Larry Bird, and they'll be like, "Man, he's so slow, and he can't jump, and blah 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 blah." And it's like, look, I guarantee you Larry Bird was the fastest, strongest guy in high school basketball. Okay. When he got to pros, he was fast enough to be a pro and he built his game on other stuff. Okay. Like the way that I would look at it, I used to say it was like a pie chart, but let's just say to build something, we'll say athletes here, Ian, but it could also be anything in life, great writer, whatever. Okay. Let's say you have to score a 100, 100 total points to be an elite athlete. Okay, to make it to the pros or whatever. We will say to make it to the pros, you have to score 100. Okay, there are different things that you could score points from, though. So, in other words, Vince Carter, who could jump through the building, he might have had 80 points just from sheer physicality. Okay, and 20 points from practice. Okay, he's at his 100. Okay, Larry Bird might have had 40 points from physicality, 30 points from skill, 30 points from tactics. Okay, he gets his 100. Okay, but you're gonna need a minimum level of physicality to succeed on any level. Like those dudes that you're like, oh man, they're so slow, dude. The slowest receiver in the NFL, the slowest, was the fastest guy on the field in high school.
But yeah,
I mean, just
absolutely.
smoking people, dude.
Sure.
So there's a serious level of basic physical talent that's required to be an elite athlete. Same way that there's a serious level of brain function or whatever you want to say that's required to be a great writer. Sorry, like I don't like Stephen King, but he's an excellent writer, certainly in a creative sense. There's a reason why there's only one Stephen King, as annoying of a person as he is. Okay, like he's a creative genius. Michael
Yes.
Crichton. We spoke about this a couple weeks ago. There's a
Yeah.
reason why there's only one Michael Crichton. He's just got it. Some people want it. They spend their whole life trying to write a great novel and they can't do it. Okay. I just think we have to be honest about these things and point people in the right direction with their talents, as opposed to saying, well, if you wish hard enough, maybe it'll work. Like, no, man. Like, you have to have it or it's just not going to work. And I always view my powerlifting career as that exact same thing. I busted my fucking ass. Could it have been better? Yes. But I do think if I had elite genetics with that level of work, I would have been knocking on the door to lower level elite within that time window.
Okay.
And,
Okay.
and, I,
That's
and I
fair.
wasn't. And I
Yeah.
wasn't. Okay. That's that.
Yeah. I have two examples for you. So, do you know who Mitch Hooper is?
Yes. Well, we discussed him last week. He just wrecked
Well,
himself in the enhanced games, correct?
yeah.
Yeah.
So, Mitch Hooper is on top of the strongman game right now.
Okay.
Okay. He's pacing to be in the conversation, maybe the greatest of all time, with how decorated he's becoming, with how many contests he's winning, with the gap in which he's winning it. He winning the majority of the events now in a lot of these strongman
Wow.
contests. Like he's actually, I'd say, in my opinion, and probably public opinion, a better overall strongman than Thor ever was. Right?
I would
Thor may
agree with
be a
that.
deadlift
That makes sense.
specialist.
That makes sense. Yeah.
Thor may be a deadlift specialist, and that's why he's kind of pigeonholed himself now to being the deadlift record breaker forever. But Mitch Hooper has been dominant force in the strongman community for a long time now, and he's still pretty young. He's probably got a few good years left in him, so he might be the most decorated, to compete with Zydrunas Savickas. Years ago, he was a marathon runner, so you would think that a strongman would need fast twitch, very explosive power to be very good at strongman, whereas apparently he was a pretty damn good, I don't know if he was world class like he is in strongman, but he was a pretty damn good marathon runner. I found it fascinating that he could do both things that well. Obviously, strongman at a much higher rate and much higher proficiency, but you would just expect someone who's really good marathon running to never have a shot in strongman ever. Second example would be John Jones. I was watching an interview recently with him, and he said that in high school he barely won a wrestling match. He was very bad at high school. He was the smallest of his two brothers, and he really had to work hard to become as good as he is. Granted, his dimensions when he grew up and filled out, just so happens that his body type was the best thing you could ever imagine for a 205
Not even
champ.
close.
His reach, his length, his size, his strength. But maybe he did work for it really hard. And maybe when you see Thor's early on his career deadlifts when he was like 19, horrible. Looked terrible. Like something you would see out of a high school weight room.
Really.
But after a decade plus of refining and work. So there are gifts, and then there is hard work that needs to be done. It just needs to be done.
Of
So
course, it's mandatory. You're
you
never just
have
going to be
to,
great without earning it. It's very rare. It's very rare,
like,
especially in these sports. You can see that
yes,
sometimes, like in basketball, dude, you get someone who's a freak athlete, especially nowadays in the NBA. They don't call like traveling or anything. You can just like run with the ball and just dunk. Like so
like
ridiculous.
Zion. Is that one of
Yeah,
those guys?
so you could be really dominant on like the college level or something, being a freak athlete. But dude, strength sports, you got to just put the work in to grow the
Time.
muscle. Okay.
It's time.
And dude, even in MMA, you could be a great athlete, but guess what? Like, you need to learn angles. You need to learn leverage. Okay. Like, if
Fight
you don't,
IQ.
yeah, like, there are guys that are, there's been an influx of like former NFL players trying to get into MMA and they get wrecked because they don't know how to fight.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
just, yeah, maybe if someone got a hold of them 20 years ago, different story.
That's the thing.
But like, I will say with Mitch Hooper, one of the things that's really underrated by strength athletes is aerobic based stuff. And the reality is, I think you're almost better having a guy that has tremendously high VO2 max and aerobic base, and then teaching him strongman later than the other way around. Because now, when he gets into training, he's capable of withstanding incredibly high training volume. Okay. Where if you have someone who's
Well
always
said.
just been really big and all they could do, like an OD Williams, probably didn't do more than like 3 sets of workout. Even granted, he's probably squatting 1,000, but regardless, like, does not have a great aerobic base. Like, it's very, very tough to add training volume in for that guy because he just can't recover from it. So for a guy like Mitch Hooper, like, that's also a dude that can blow up physically very quickly because that's someone who really can train to failure. He's not just going to get winded from lifting weights. He could push his muscles very far. Like, you know this as
Valid
well as I
point.
do. Most people, when they're doing legs, they give up on the set. And I don't blame them. This is not calling someone a pussy. They can no longer continue, I will say, because of their lungs, not because of their legs. If you are an elite marathon runner or a good marathon runner, you've got tremendous capillary density. You can withstand a large quantity of work, and now before you know it, you have your elite genetics plus your capacity to work harder than somebody else because you've trained your body for it. And I think that's boom, like that's what you're going to see. Like Bromley has spoken about this, where he says he probably was talking about Mitch Hooper, that he's seeing more guys get into strongman and do really, really well coming from calisthenic backgrounds, other stuff, not guys that are just like, they start doing the fucking Conan's wheel in high school. Like they're
Yeah.
doing general stuff. They have great kinesthetic awareness. They move really well. That's another thing. So they could put more miles on their joints without blowing their bodies in half, which is a huge thing, obviously. Okay. And then before you know it, they're set up for a long career. They maintain that aerobic base. They maintain that mobility. I mean, dude, you and I both know it's much harder to build mobility, would be an overhead position, hip external rotation or something, when you're 260 and inflamed and squatting heavy all the time than it is to maintain it if you built it when you were younger.
It's damn near impossible
Yeah,
to build it
I,
at that
I would
point.
I would
You've
actually
committed
agree with you.
yourself to a certain
Yes.
body type and
Yes, I would
adaptation
totally
for
agree with
sure.
you on that. So now you have guys that are developing these traits that will really help them get more out of their body in the long term, and now all they have to do is maintain it.
Yes.
You
Yeah.
know, and
That's
there's
fair.
just a
That's
big
fair.
difference. There's just a big difference. I mean, I think you're going to see more guys like that. And listen, that's a guy who's obviously broadly physically talented.
Yeah.
You know, Mitch
Yeah.
Hooper. Like there are guys like a perfect example. Like I could be wrong about this, but like, and I don't want to pick on him because he's a legend. But Randy Johnson, okay, he is one of my all-time favorite pitchers. 6'10", left-handed guy, throwing 97 miles an hour. His release point is like in front of your face because he has these crazy long arms. Okay, amazing pitcher. Like if I had to pick someone to pitch a game to save my life, I'd probably pick Randy Johnson. Like that's like I just that impressed by the guy. But I feel like he was just designed to throw a baseball. Like
He
when
was doing what he's meant for.
you see him like handle the bat. There are some pitchers that were even capable of hitting home runs back when pitchers had to actually bat. Like they were generally athletic. Randy Johnson was just made to throw a fucking baseball right at your face. And he did. He did it better than anybody. Like some guys are like, we found your niche in sports. That's it. Just go do it. Other dudes are like, oh, I could have played center field. I could have done this.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there's some guys that are like that. Not Randy. At least in my opinion,
Yeah.
that's all I'll say. So Mitch Hooper's obviously a dude who did a lot. But again, dude, Lance Armstrong was an elite triathlete when he was younger, and he just decided to commit himself to cycling. I'll leave you with this. Here's an interesting side note about how you never know when something will benefit you or when it won't. Okay. Lance was a triathlete, really, really good. I think he did sprint or like Olympic triathlons, not like the ultra, not like the Ironman ones or anything. He did those later. So I'll give you 2 points. He was very muscular for a cyclist when he got into cycling because he had built a muscular body through a lot of swimming. Okay. It's going to sound ridiculous, but for these long tours, the Tour de France, Tour of Italy, Tour of Spain, whatever, like that size works against you. You and I both know it's very hard to lose muscle mass once you've put it on. Okay. Guess what? He lost a good amount of it when he had cancer. Came back in,
Definitely.
restructured his body in a way that it was designed for long tours. He was no longer going to be a sprint guy. He lost the muscle, okay, and just put on whatever he needed to on his legs. He changed the way they cycle, which was, if you look at old cycling tapes, you'll see the guys would have the bikes on much heavier gears with slower cadences. Okay. When Lance lost the muscle, he switched to higher cadences, okay, with lighter gears. So he would try to be like, let's say, like 100 RPM or something, where some of his rivals would be like 60. And they're doing these long, heavy pulls. And these
Like
guys were more
powerful.
muscular. They were
Okay.
more muscular than Lance, but the pressure he was able to put on his heart and lungs as a result of this kind of restructuring of his body made a big difference, right? So that's right away. You just, the point is, you never know what's going to help you improve or not. You know what I mean? Here's a guy that was doing triathlons. He goes into cycling, gets deathly ill, and then somehow was able to use that to restructure his body to become this elite endurance athlete, where before he was good and he had the potential to be great, but he wasn't great. And
Fair enough.
you
Okay.
want to talk about levels? I'll leave you with this, dude. This is insane to watch. Right around the time that all the stuff broke and he was on Oprah or whatever, he had started doing Ironman triathlons. So it's like, I don't even know. I know that you end the race by running a marathon. That's the last thing you do, which is crazy to
Yes.
think
Yeah.
about. Okay, the first, they opened with the swim, and as you've told me in the past, they had to start opening with the swim because I didn't know people were literally dying. They were literally drowning. Okay, when they would have the swim second, or which is crazy
The
in
order
retrospect.
matters.
Yes,
Order really
big
matters.
time. Okay, the bike is second, dude. You're watching. It was in Kona, I believe, and this, he's going with other like elite triathletes. When Lance gets out of the water and gets on the bike, it looks like he's on a fucking motorcycle compared to the regular people.
Is that right?
It's unreal, dude. I'll see if I can clip this out and put it online, dude.
Yeah, please.
The speed with which, and these are again like elite triathletes. It's kind of just like we said about Krokop and Vanderlei, right? Like, we got a mixed martial artist, and now we've got a kickboxer. But this guy wants to strike with the kickboxer. You're in trouble, okay, dude. He's nowhere near, at least from what I could tell, the first person to get out of the water. Okay, by the end of the swim, he's just running the marathon by himself and wins the race.
My God.
Because he's, by the end of the bike rather, he's, because he just,
He's light years
dude,
ahead.
it's literally all the people cycling, and it's him on the left with motorcycles flanking him, just destroying people. Like, it looks like he's riding a motorcycle. And then by the time he gets off the bike, there's just no one anywhere. And it's like, how can anybody run fast enough to make up for that?
Nobody.
You can't. It's impossible.
Nobody.
Like, the bike goes faster than your feet. This guy is a 7-time Tour de France winner. It's a wrap. And that's a guy that was selected for that. That's a dude who had the natural talent. He obviously suffered immensely putting insane. You're on a bike for 6 hours a day.
That's crazy.
Think about the
That's
hemorrhoids
crazy.
you have to have.
How do your joints hold up? Yeah, the hemorrhoids. How do your joints hold up to that? Like, I don't know. Maybe I'm soft, but like, after some training and some things that I do, the kickboxing, whatever, it's just like, I'm banged up a little bit. Like 6 hours of anything. Swimming I get because it's so easy on your joints and you're in like a less than normal gravity environment. But with cycling and especially running, how do you put that much work in? I mean, how do some of my ultra marathon runner clients, how do you, it must be an innate durability. It must be something you have a gift for. You are sturdy enough, you strength train enough to hold your joints together. But geez, man, that's also,
said this,
where does your mind go? How do you stay sane after 6 hours of cycling? I can't do 20 minutes of cycling without going insane.
It's meditative for them, for sure.
I'm sure.
You know,
I'm sure.
but like you said, dude, what we said before, systems select for different things. Like, you could have an elite VO2 max, but if your joints can't handle the mileage, well,
Doesn't
you
matter.
know what I mean? I've seen guys that are
Doesn't matter.
phenomenal at jiu-jitsu. They can only train 3 days a week. Their bodies are fall apart.
Got it.
There are other guys that are not quite as good. They can train 12 times a week. Over
Wow.
time, they close the gap,
Yes.
right? Over
Yeah.
time. So, like we said, it's how do you get that score of 100, right? And
Okay.
and durability, especially in endurance sports. I mean, that's everything. You know what I mean? If your joints can't take the wear and tear, you're fucked. Of course, most of these people have started these things when they were younger, so they've built up the resilience to it. But like you said before, you've had clients that ran a marathon and they're done for life, and then others that, oh yeah, I do want a season. You know what I mean? Like
Like a layup.
Yeah, like, no big deal.
Yeah,
That's it. It's the genetic variance is so broad, and I guess, like, when I talk about PEDs, I guess what I'm really ranting about is just people not understanding genetic variance, you know?
that's a fair point. Yeah,
Right.
that's
I'll leave you with this story, okay? I know I'm talking too much, but I wanna give you this is the first time I
yeah.
ever experienced understanding genetics, okay?
Okay.
This left a huge impression on me. When I was a kid, I went to the Bahamas with my family. I must have been this was the summer between ninth and 10th grade, okay? And I remember the hotel that we were staying at, rather the hotel next to the hotel we were staying at, was holding a convention for the NBA Players Association. And I was on a dock, like where all these boats were, and I walked past Scottie Pippen. And he was still playing at the time. He was
You
probably playing
mentioned
for
this.
the Portland Trailblazers. I saw what that guy's body looked like, and I was like, "Oh, I can't play basketball. Like, I could play it for fun with my friends, sure, okay, but I saw that guy's body type, and on when you watch television, okay, it they all look similar because they're all freakish, okay, so it doesn't look like there's anything too out of the ordinary. Dude, he walked past me and I was like, "Oh, yeah, like, I can't go to the NBA." Not that I was even
Now it
seriously
makes
thinking
sense.
about it, but yeah, it was like, "Okay, like, this guy just has it." Okay, like it's that simple. And when you see someone like that, Scottie Pippen or Buddy Dom or Mike Jenkins, it makes a lot of sense. And you have to really sit back and be like, if I sink a lot of time and health into this, am I going to get the same rate of return that this guy will? Or should I continue to do this for fun and think about what my gifts really are? You have to be honest about your gifts. You should find something in your life that people are jealous of. If it's writing, drawing, and get really good at that. Okay, so that's
Follow
what
your
you should be
talent,
doing.
you're
Yeah,
saying. Follow
yeah,
your
yeah.
talent.
Don't look at someone like a Lance and be like, oh, I could have done that if I took steroids. No, you couldn't have.
Yeah.
Okay, would not have
Yeah.
happened. Okay, I don't know. That's all. I mean, that's all I got to say for today. How
Yeah,
about you, bud?
likewise.
Yeah. All right. So
Yeah,
here's the deal.
great episode.
We're gonna come equipped for another Pride Month episode next week. And just to round this out, guys, I apologize for being a little frazzled today, but like I said before, the car accident stuff that was going on my end shook me up pretty good. So just be safe out there, guys. Take care of yourself. Always tell your family you love them before you leave the house because you just never know what's going to happen. So I'll see you guys next week, and we may have a couple surprises coming up for you. I got to schedule them with Ian and some other people. Wink, wink, nod, nod. But we've got a couple guests that are interested in coming on. We're going to sort this all out. But you guys have a great one.